Chapter 230. You're quite lucky, kid. You actually have such a beauty to accompany you, the human face on the tip of the tongue said. If I could hug this beauty to sleep, tsk tisk. The human face made of flesh revealed a perverted expression. It's a pity that I don't know female gecko spirit. Otherwise, I could introduce one to a beast like you. As Yifan spoke, he held his sword upside down and used the handkerchief that Fujiwara no Chiko had given him to cover his mouth and nose. The handkerchief still had Fujiwara no Chiko's body fragrance. When the fragrance entered his nose, Yifan, who was still faintly nauseous, suddenly felt much better. Hee. The human face on the tip of the tongue laughed and said, After I take your life, I'll first absorb all the spiritual energy here. Then, with this beauty, beasts will always be beasts. Yifan, who was in midair, laughed. You're already at death's door, yet you're still dreaming. Whether it's a dream or not, we'll know soon enough. The human face on flesh laughed eerily and gradually disappeared. The huge tongue then suddenly rolled back and retracted into the bloody mouth. Yifan, who was in midair, held Li fire in his left hand and snake shadow in his right. He calmly floated in the air and coldly looked at the gecko spirit on the ground. He knew that the gecko spirit was proficient in sorcery, so he didn't attack rashly. He wanted to find the beast's weakness first, then think of a way to defeat it in one move. Boom, 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 boom. 4 loud sounds were heard. The gecko spirit on the ground stared with a pair of huge, cold eyes, and its thick limbs sank deep into the soil. Then, it stuck its body close to the ground and aimed its huge tail at Yifan in the air again. Buzz! The gecko spirit's tightly shut mouth made a crisp sound. Then, a faint red light shone out from its bloody mouth. Yifan, who was floating in midair, frowned slightly. What kind of trick was this gecko spirit trying to play? Buzz! The red light in the gecko spirit's mouth became brighter and brighter. Its huge head had turned completely red. Even its huge grayish-brown eyes had begun to turn blood red. What a strong killing intent! Yifan thought that this gecko spirit was probably going to use a killing move. Boom! Just as Yifan was fully focused on the gecko demon on the ground opened its mouth wide. In an instant, tens of thousands of dazzling red light beams as thick as fingers shot out from its bloody mouth. It was this red light again. Yifan was relieved. This red light couldn't do anything to him. Shwa! Tens of thousands of red beams of light shot out in all directions. They were not aimed at Yifan at all. Instead, they shot towards Yifan from all directions. Surprisingly, not a single beam of light hit Yifan. What was he doing? Missed? Yifan, who was in midair, began to wonder. Shwa! Just as Yifan was feeling puzzled, the 10,000 beams of red light instantly merged together, forming a gigantic light pillar that was a foot thick. Yifan's heart skipped a beat. What a clever move! First, it used the 10,000 beams of red light to surround him from all directions. This way, he had no way of dodging. After merging together, it immediately narrowed the encirclement, combining the 10,000 beams of red light to form an extremely strong force and attack him. This move was exactly the same as the one Yifan had used to attack the gecko demon with the cold air pocket. Boom! In a flash, the thick light pillar that had merged into one emitted a blinding light. It gathered together majestically and attacked Yifan right in the middle. The strength was so strong that even the gecko demon on the ground sank in an instant. Its thick limbs sank a foot deep into the ground. Seeing this, Yifan immediately mobilized the spiritual chi in his chi-si to activate the snake shadow sword in his hand. The snake shadow sword hummed softly and emitted a bright silver light. Boom! Under the activation of Yifan's pure spiritual chi, the radiant snake shadow sword caught the thick beam of light shot out by the gecko demon. Sizzle! 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 The silver light was resplendent and the red light was intense. Both sides were beginning to expend energy. Just as they were in a stalemate, the lizard demon on the ground made its move again. With a swoosh, its gigantic tongue, which was over 100 feet long, stretched out from its bloody mouth and headed straight for Yi Fan, who was in the air. Seeing the tongue attack again, Yi Fan immediately increased his spiritual qi by 10%. The snake's shadow sword in his hand shone brighter by another foot. Although the tongue was powerful, it was still made of flesh. The snake's shadow sword in his hand was extremely sharp and had a biting cold aura. The tongue probably did not dare to approach him rashly. The reason it attacked him was definitely to distract him. Indeed, as he expected, the tongue slowed down when it was about 3 feet away from him. It was indeed like this. As Yi Fan thought, he increased the strength in his hand and used all his strength to resist the red beam of light shot out from the gecko demon's mouth. But he was wrong. Just as he thought that the tongue was feigning an attack, a scene that shocked him appeared. Paw! The huge tongue immediately burst apart when it was about 3 feet away from him, instantly turning into hundreds of blood-red tongues that were as thick as an adult's arm. Shwa! While Yi Fan was in a daze, the hundreds of tongues quickly circled around to Yi Fan's front, back, left, and right. Then, they instantly intertwined and wrapped around Yi Fan. Sizzle! As Yi Fan had the snake's shadow sword in his hand, the biting cold aura emitted by the snake's shadow sword caused the hundreds of blood-red tongues to instantly twitch. Was this gecko demon crazy? Seeing the tongues around him being frozen by the cold aura, Yi Fan had a look of disbelief. This beast knew that tongues were afraid of the cold aura, yet it still wanted to use this move. At this moment, the red beam of light continued to attack Yi Fan. Through the beam of light, Yi Fan suddenly realized that on the tip of the gecko demon's tail, there was a red ball of light about 10 feet wide that was constantly accumulating energy and spinning. Not good. Yi Fan, who was in midair, secretly cried out. He instantly understood the gecko demon's true intentions. This gecko demon first wanted to trap him, then used the killer move on its tail to deal with him. Wung! The red ball of light on the tip of the gecko demon's tail grew bigger and bigger, and it was spinning faster and faster. The shining red light illuminated the entire ground red. Yi Fan, who was surrounded by tongues, did not dare to be careless. He immediately circulated his spiritual energy and continued to activate the snake's shadow sword in his hand, constantly emitting cold aura. He understood that he could no longer set up a spiritual energy barrier outside his body. The reason was simple. If he did that, the gecko demon's tongues would completely absorb his spiritual energy. Wung! The snake's shadow sword let out a cheerful cry, and the cold aura around him rose sharply. Zhi. The tongues surrounding Yi Fan could not stand the cold aura emitted by the snake's shadow sword, and immediately expanded the encirclement. Jie bang bang! Although the tongues expanded the encirclement to avoid the cold aura, they were still completely frozen by the cold aura of the snake's shadow sword, and cold smoke rose. The gecko demon on the ground endured the pain of being eroded by the cold aura, and did not retreat. It continued to accumulate the red ball of light on the tip of its tail. Chapter 231. What a good gecko spirit! Yi Fan, who was in midair, sighed in his heart. This beast would rather endure such great pain to trap him. He had trapped him for no other reason than to completely defeat him with a single move. The strength at the tip of this beast's tail was extraordinary. This beast must have forcefully activated its inner core and used a killing move. Without the flawless robe on him, he couldn't set up a spirit barrier to protect himself. If he was really hit by this strength, it wouldn't be a joke. Could it be that he had to unseal the frost dragon to deal with this gecko spirit? Yi Fan thought. Unsealing the frost dragon was his ultimate move, but it was also his trump card. As a killing move, he didn't want to use it lightly. However, looking at the current situation, if he didn't unseal the frost dragon, he wouldn't be able to pass this hurdle. Yi Fan was a little hesitant. While he was hesitating, Yi Fan's gaze fell on the Everfire sword in his hand. Yi Fan's eyes lit up. Ever since this ever-fire sword was in his hands, he had never used it. Although he had seen the power of Hattori Qianxiong, he had never tried using spiritual energy to activate this ever-fire sword. He had heard from Brother Kim that the ever-fire sword and the frost dragon sword were mutually reinforcing and counteracting. Its power was not below the frost dragon sword. Since this ever-fire sword wasn't sealed like the frost dragon sword, if he activated it to the extreme, there would be an unexpected effect. Thinking of this, Yi Fan immediately freed his left hand and pulled out the ever-fire sword from its scabbard. Clang! The roar of a tiger and a dragon sounded. Red light, a dazzling red light, the imposing ever-fire sword was unsheathed. After the ever-fire sword was unsheathed, the scabbard seemed to have a mind of its own and actually floated slowly in the air. What a peerless divine weapon! Yi Fan sighed in his heart. This ever-fire sword was 3 feet long, surrounded by a red light. On the sword, a 5-clawed fire dragon with glaring eyes and surrounded by flames faintly appeared. What's going on? Yi Fan exclaimed in his heart. The dragon on the departing fire sword had actually turned into a fire dragon? When he fought Hattori Qianxiong at the ancestral mansion, he did not see the fire dragon pattern on the Li fire sword. He remembered very clearly that at that time, the everlasting fire sword only had a fire dragon carved on the scabbard and a dragon head carved on the hilt. The dragon head's mouth contained a fiery red dragon pearl. After the sword was sheathed, the dragon head and the dragon body merged into one. When Hattori Qianxio's sword was unsheathed, there was indeed a faint dragon tattoo on the blade. Red light covered it, but there was only a dragon tattoo. There was no flame on it. Could it be? Could it be that his eyes were playing tricks on him? Yi Fan thought to himself. Who cares? The most important thing now was to focus on dealing with the enemy. As soon as the departing fire sword was unsheathed, a terrifying heat wave immediately spread out in all directions. The cold chi of the cold dragon sword in Yi Fan's right hand was immediately offset by the surging heat wave emitted by the departing fire sword. Hua! The tongues surrounding Yi Fan felt the increase in temperature and were no longer as cold. They immediately coiled around each other and surrounded him again. Yi Fan saw that the 2 divine weapons in his hands were about to cancel each other out. He immediately withdrew the spiritual energy from the snake shadow sword and placed it back into his waist. At the same time, he used his spiritual energy to activate the departing fire sword in his left hand and blocked the huge red light beam from the gecko demon. Ever since he obtained the departing fire sword, this was the first time he used it. He was used to using his spiritual energy to activate the snake shadow sword, so he habitually used 30% of his spiritual energy from the start. 1. After the departing fire sword was activated by Yi Fan's spiritual energy, it let out a long cry. Then, the red light became brighter, and the sword's tip increased dramatically. The bright red light was so bright that even Yi Fan had to squint his eyes. Boom! The departing fire sword blocked the gecko demon's red light beam. Chi! Zhi. Green smoke filled the air. The tongues that had just closed in were immediately scalded by the heat emitted by the departing fire sword. A burnt smell immediately spread in all directions. What a strong sword chi! Yi Fan knew that the departing fire sword was not ordinary, but he did not expect that under the activation of his spiritual energy, it would have such an intimidating aura. Good. Today, I want to see how powerful this departing fire sword is under the activation of my spiritual energy. With a single thought, Yi Fan's will and chi arrived. The pure spiritual energy in his energy reserve instantly went berserk. It surged violently through Yi Fan's 8 extraordinary meridians and flowed through his entire body at high speed. Then, it began to gather in Yi Fan's palm and directly rushed into the Everflame sword in his hand. Following the activation of Yi Fan's tyrannical spiritual energy, the dragon pearl in the mouth of the dragon head on the departing fire sword's hilt suddenly emitted a dazzling red light. With a bang, a golden flame suddenly rose from the blazing red dragon pearl, and the golden light dazzled. Who? The golden flame quickly spread across the dragon pattern on the sword, and in the blink of an eye, a blazing golden flame dragon coiled around the departing fire sword. Good treasure! Yi Fan excitedly blurted out. He did not expect that the departing fire sword would have such an intimidating aura. One must know that he had only used 50% of his spiritual energy. Zhi. Among the tongues, the innermost layer had already begun to burn, and was instantly roasted into dark red jerky by the departing fire sword's heat. Zizi. The red light on the tip of the gecko's tail had already reached 30 feet, and was making a sizzling sound. It resisted the piercing pain, and did not let go of the tongues, allowing its tongue to be roasted by the flames. The reason why it endured such great pain was only for one purpose, and that was to hit it in one hit. What a strong power! In the air, Yi Fan saw that the red light on the tip of the gecko's tail had already reached 30 feet, and secretly exclaimed, "I can't let this stalemate continue." Yi Fan thought to himself, and suddenly mobilized his spiritual energy to use his movement technique, and fiercely pressed down. The stalemate began to break, and Yi Fan, who was resisting the gecko's red beam of light, began to slowly descend. The gecko's red beam of light began to retreat bit by bit. Swish! When Yi Fan was less than 30 feet away from the gecko on the ground suddenly withdrew its tongues, and then closed its huge mouth, and the attack of the red beam of light came to an abrupt end. The red light on the tip of its tail had already expanded to 15 feet. It was ready to attack. Yi Fan, who was in the air, suddenly lost all resistance, and suddenly rushed down at high speed. Not good. Yi Fan was alarmed. This beast was deliberately luring him closer. It wanted to kill him in the shortest distance possible. When, bang! In the instant that Yi Fan understood, the gecko's killing move began. The explosively flashing red ball of light at the end of its tail quickly left the tip of its tail. Like a meteor, it shot towards Yi Fan, who was less than 15 meters away from the ground, dragging a long tail behind it. The speed and strength of the attack seemed to be completely torn apart. Hissing sounds. Yi Fan, who was falling from the air, had no time to dodge. The distance between him and the gecko was only 15 feet, and with the addition of the fact that they were moving in opposite directions, the gecko's light ball could reach him in the blink of an eye. Li Hua, this time it's up to you, Yi Fan thought to himself. His figure did not change. Using the leaf fire sword in his hand, which was flashing with red light and raging flames, he suddenly slashed at the huge ball of light that the lizard spirit had arrived at in an instant. Chapter 232. 30 feet, 20 feet, 10 feet. The majestic red flaming dragon and the dazzling red light ball met in an instant. Boom! The earth trembled and the shock wave dispersed. Red light splashed everywhere and raging flames rose. The two powerful forces quickly exploded between the lizard demon and Yi Fan. Swoosh! The originally dark night sky was instantly illuminated by the burst of light, making it as bright as day. Swish! Boom! A ring-shaped shockwave instantly spread out, and the air was torn apart by this rapidly expanding shockwave, producing a deafening sound. The soil and stones on the ground were instantly shattered by this shockwave, and dust flew everywhere. Yi Fan used his movement skill and quickly retreated. At the same time, he set up a 3 feet thick spiritual energy barrier around himself. This lizard demon is so powerful, Yi Fan thought to himself. To be able to gather such a powerful force, if not for the divine weapon in his hands, it would have been difficult for him to fight against this fellow. Yi Fan thought to himself as he looked down. As the rain of stones and flying dust gradually dispersed, Yi Fan could clearly see the situation on the ground. At this time, the lizard demon had already sunk 5 feet deep into the ground from the huge shockwave. Within a 300 feet radius, all the flowers and trees had disappeared, forming a huge crater. Looking at the lizard demon again, it was covered in blood and panting nonstop. The move just now had already used up more than half of its spiritual energy. If not for its many years of cultivation and its pure inner core, its spiritual energy would have already dried up. The lizard demon panted heavily, and its pair of brown eyes stared fiercely at Yi Fan, who was in the air. If not for the two divine weapons in this pretty boy's hands, it would have already succeeded. Why would it have to reveal its true form? Speaking of which, those two divine weapons were really not to be underestimated. One was hot and one was cold, one was yin and one was yang. Its tongue was not a match for them at all. This time, it originally thought that it could suck the opponent's spiritual energy dry with its unique skill of absorbing the opponent's spiritual energy. However, it did not expect to go for wool and come back shorn. Not only did it reveal its true form, it also activated its own inner core and attacked with all its might, but it still could not win. This was something that it never would have thought of before coming here. A wise man does not fight when the odds are against him. This little brat's spiritual energy was abundant, and he also had a divine weapon. Since it did not have enough spiritual energy, it would give up for today. Next time, it would borrow a divine weapon from great god Xietian. Any divine weapon from the 9 blades would be enough to cut this little brat into 10,000 pieces. What a troublesome fellow! Yi Fan thought to himself, since we've already fought to this extent today, I can't let him live no matter what. Otherwise, there'll be endless trouble in the future. Striking while the iron was hot, Yi Fan had already concluded from the gecko spirit's panting appearance. The gecko spirit's move just now had consumed a lot of its spiritual energy. Now that it was low on spiritual energy, he had to finish it off in one go. As Yi Fan thought about this, his killing intent surged. He used his peerless movement technique to descend from the sky again. At the same time, he used his spiritual energy to activate the fleeting flame sword in his hand. The fleeting flame sword was the same as before. It shone with a bright red light and a dragon-shaped flame wrapped around it. This time, I'll turn you into a roasted gecko. Yi Fan held the leaf fire in his hand. A shadow rapidly descended. When the gecko spirit on the ground saw Yi Fan attack again, it immediately reacted. Its body began to expand like an air balloon. In the blink of an eye, it had expanded to 4 or 5 times its original size. It was like a small mountain. Yi Fan did not slow down and continued to dive downwards. Just when Yi Fan was less than 300 feet away from the gecko spirit, he saw a scene that made him feel 10 times more disgusted than before. However, as the body of the gecko demon continued to expand, countless fist-sized meat blisters rapidly bulged on the surface of its bumpy skin. There seemed to be living things in the meat blisters, constantly twisting and writhing. Yi Fan's stomach began to churn again. Guji! Guji! As the fleshy blisters on the gecko spirit's body grew bigger and bigger, the skin of the blisters became thinner and more transparent. In the countless fleshy blisters, thousands of small geckos with blood-red eyes were constantly waving their limbs, ready to break out at any time. Ugh! This scene made Yi Fan's scalp tingle, and he faintly felt nauseous. Pah! Just when he was preparing to use his spiritual energy to suppress the churning in his stomach, countless crisp sounds of explosions rang out. All the fleshy blisters on the gecko spirit's body burst open at the same time. Pus splattered everywhere. Hua! Countless small, fist-sized geckos with brown bodies and red eyes burst out from the gecko spirit's body. Guji! Guji! As soon as the dense group of geckos left the gecko spirit's body, they immediately used the force of the bursting fleshy blisters to stomp on the ground and pounce towards Yi Fan, who was falling from the sky. In a moment, the group of geckos covered the sky and covered the earth. Pus splattered everywhere, and the stench assailed the nostrils. This scene caused Yi Fan, who was in midair, to be completely dumbfounded. He forcefully used his spiritual energy to suppress his churning stomach and swung the flaming sword in his hand, which was ready to be used, at the black mass of geckos that were pouncing towards him. Hugh! A dragon-shaped flame, which was several feet long, surged out from the fire sword and rushed towards the group of geckos in the sky like raindrops. Chi! Guji! After the dense group of geckos rushed towards the dragon-shaped flame, they were immediately burned and screeched. In the blink of an eye, they turned into green smoke and disappeared. However, this group of geckos did not seem to be afraid of death. As soon as the group of geckos in the front were burned to ashes, the ones behind immediately pounced on Yi Fan. Layer after layer of geckos crazily rushed up, as if they would not give up until they bit Yi Fan to death. Yi Fan, who was in midair, saw that the group of geckos were actually not afraid of death and became furious. "I'm not even afraid of the big ones. Why would I be afraid of you little bastards?" As Yi Fan thought about this, he once again activated his spiritual energy and used the radiantly fire sword in his hand to slash twice at the group of geckos that were rushing up dauntlessly. This time, Yi Fan was ruthless. These 2 slashes had 10% more spiritual energy than before. This gecko spirit knew his weakness of being easily disgusted and used these kinds of despicable methods one after another, which made him very angry. Swish! Swish! After slashing twice, 2 dragon-shaped flames with their heads raised and tails wagging rushed out one after the other. It was different from before. The previous dragon-shaped flame was more than 100 feet long, but this time, the fire dragons were more than 20 feet long. The 2 dragon-shaped flames that were steaming with raging flames rushed towards the group of geckos that were constantly screaming and rushing up like a storm. Guji! When Yi Fan's 2 dragons came out together, the group of geckos immediately let out horrifying screams, following which their bodies were covered in flames and rained down. In an instant it was as if the sky was raining fire. The air was filled with an unpleasant burnt smell. Yi Fan, who was in midair, looked at the dead geckos that were falling down like rain and spat out the breath that he had been holding in his chest. During the battle just now, he was afraid that he would vomit, so he had been holding his breath. His body slowly rose more than 100 feet. The air at high altitudes was fresher and he needed fresh air. Chapter 233. High up in the air, Yi Fan breathed in large mouthfuls of fresh air as he looked at the gecko spirit with a serious expression. This gecko spirit's every move was weirder and more disgusting than the previous one. He did not know what other evil moves were waiting for him. "Today you have a divine weapon in hand. I am not your opponent." The gecko spirit's deep voice came from its bloody mouth. Next time I will take your life, Sananara." After the gecko spirit finished speaking, its body quickly sank into the ground. In the blink of an eye, more than half of its body had drilled into the ground. "You want to run?" High up in the air, Yi Fan did not expect the gecko spirit to actually retreat. He immediately activated his movement technique and swooped down. No matter what, he could not let this beast escape. As Yi Fan thought about it, he suddenly activated the Everflame sword in his hand and swung it at the gecko spirit who was continuously drilling into the ground from a distance of 300 feet away. Shwa! The fire dragon appeared again and went straight into the ground. Boom! Flames scattered in all directions, gravel flew, and dust flew. Yi Fan continued to descend, unwilling to let the gecko spirit escape like this. With a whoosh, he pulled out the snake shadow sword from his waist. Since this gecko spirit could walk underground, then he would use the cold air of the snake shadow sword to seal the ground. Let's see where it can run to. The snake shadow sword shone brightly and emitted a dense cold air. Yi Fan used his spiritual energy to activate the snake shadow sword and continuously swung it at the ground. Boom! 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 The snake shadow sword's cold air was emitted from the snake shadow sword and directly rushed into the ground that was filled with dust. Jie purring purring! Crisp sounds rang out continuously. With the deep pit under the lizard demon as the center, the ground within a radius of 300 feet was instantly covered with a thick layer of ice. When the dust gradually dispersed, Yifan furrowed his brows. In the deep crater that was already covered in a thick layer of ice, there was only a giant tail that was more than 3 feet long that kept flipping and bouncing around. Yifan slowly landed on the ground and channeled his spiritual energy to his ears. He bent down and carefully listened to the sounds in the ground. The rustling sound came, and it became smaller and smaller until it finally disappeared completely. What a cunning fellow! Yifan had a solemn expression on his face. This gecko spirit knew that its cold chi was powerful and could use it to freeze the ground. Therefore, after it drilled into the ground, it did not leave. Instead, it drilled directly into the depths of the ground. It understood that although Yifan's cold chi was powerful, it could not reach the depths of the ground. This way, he could escape unscathed. It had purposely left half of its tail behind in order to distract Yifan's attention. For a gecko, it was normal for its tail to break automatically. This was an innate ability of geckos. Yifan stood up and frowned. Today we let the tiger return to the mountain. Looks like there will be a lot of fierce battles in the future. As Yifan spoke, he sheathed the snake's shadow into his waist and returned the leaf fire to its scabbard. Then, he rose from the ground and flew towards the entrance of the Lingyun cave. Rumble! The stone door closed, and Yifan furrowed his brows as he walked into the cave with a solemn expression. Fujiwara no Chiko, who had been waiting in the cave for a long time, saw that Yifan had returned and immediately went to welcome him. Although she was in the cave, she was extremely worried about Yifan's safety. Now that she saw that Yifan had returned safely, she felt as if a large stone had been lifted from her heart. How was it? Are you all right? Fujiwara no Chiko asked with concern. She saw that Yifan's brows were furrowed and thought that Yifan was injured. I'm fine. Yifan smiled at Fujiwara no Chiko. It's just that I let that bastard escape. Although he spoke casually, he was extremely worried. As the saying goes, don't be afraid of a thief stealing, but be afraid of a thief remembering. Before the gecko spirit left, it had told him that it would take his life next time. He was not worried about his own safety. He was worried about Fujiwara no Chiko. If it ran away, then it ran away. It's good that you're fine. Fujiwara no Chiko saw that Yifan was fine and gave a long sigh of relief. She said this while taking the everlasting flame sword from Yifan's hand and placing it on the stone table. Then she picked up the teapot and poured tea for Yifan. Where did this monster come from? How did it find this place? Xie Tian's subordinate. Yifan replied. Fujiwara no Chiko heard Yifan's words and her heart shook. She stopped the movement of her hand and turned around to look at Yifan. Xie Tian? Fujiwara no Chiko knit her brows. These two words reminded her of the evil god statue in Matsumoto Takeyoshi's secret room. Back then, that statue had made her, Sasaki and Akichi Miyamoto, who had profound cultivation, kneel on the ground in an instant. What kind of power was this? It had to be known that this was only a statue. What did Xie Tian's subordinate come here for? Fujiwara no Chiko asked while pouring tea. Then she turned around and handed the fragrant tea to Yifan. To kill me, Yifan said as he took the fragrant tea from Fujiwara no Chiko and drank several mouthfuls. The battle just now had lasted for almost an hour and he was already thirsty. Kill you? Fujiwara no Chiko asked in a puzzled voice. When did this evil god get involved with you? Because my life is not good, Yifan said as he put down the teacup. Then he sat down on the stone chair and told Fujiwara no Chiko what the gecko said. You are Xie Tian's stumbling block in this life? Fujiwara no Chiko was a little confused after hearing Yifan's words. Xie Tian and Yifan, one was an evil god in the distant East Ocean continent and the other was her husband in the Great Ming dynasty. They were separated by tens of thousands of miles and did not know each other. How could they be together? I'm not sure about this either. Yi Fan leaned back on the stone chair and put his feet on the stone table. He put his hands behind his head and said, I have nothing to do with that evil god, so when did I become his stumbling block? There must be a mystery behind this. Fujiwara no Chiko said with a serious face. She shook her head and said, No matter what, you still have to be careful. Yi Fan smiled and stood up. He pulled Fujiwara no Chiko over and let her sit on his lap. Fujiwara no Chiko slapped Yi Fan with her hand and said, Stop messing around. I'm talking to you about something serious. I say, my wife. Yi Fan grabbed Fujiwara no Chiko's hand and said with a smile, Now that you and I are living in seclusion in the Lingyun cave, how can we be careful? Fujiwara no Chiko was asked this by Yi Fan and was speechless. My wife, it's getting late. You should rest. Yi Fan stood up and smiled as he picked up Fujiwara no Chiko. Let's go. Your husband will carry you to sleep. Aya. Fujiwara no Chiko kept slapping Yi Fan's shoulder. Put me down. You fought with that big gecko for so long, aren't you tired? I'm not tired. Yi Fan smirked as he carried Fujiwara no Chiko to the bedroom upstairs. Fighting with that gecko spirit is too boring. Fighting with my wife is much more interesting. Fujiwara no Chiko's fists once again fell like rain 2 hours later. Yi Fan looked at Fujiwara no Chiko, who was sleeping soundly beside him. He slowly sat up from the bed. He quietly got off the bed and put on his clothes. He took the snake shadow sword and the everflame sword and left the stone house. He went straight to the top of Fengming Mountain. It was already midnight. Mingyu was hanging high above Fengming Mountain, and the stars were shining brightly. Yi Fan was not in the mood to enjoy the beautiful scenery. He sat down on the empty ground and thought hard. Chapter 234. The battle with the gecko spirit made Yi Fan deeply realize that there is always someone better than you out there. If it wasn't for his divine weapon, he wouldn't have been able to defeat the gecko spirit. It must be known that the gecko spirit was able to absorb the opponent's spiritual power. Based on this point alone, he was completely at a disadvantage. Originally, he thought that by relying on his strong spiritual power, he would be invincible. However, today's gecko spirit gave him a very vivid lesson, making him realize a principle. First, no matter how strong one's spiritual power was, one couldn't sit back and relax. When encountering an expert like the gecko spirit that could absorb spiritual power, one's spiritual power couldn't be fully utilized. If one was not careful, one's own spiritual power would instead become the opponent's advantage. No matter how fast one's movement was, one couldn't completely rely on it. No matter how fast a cotton ball was, it couldn't do anything to a stubborn stone. Cui Ziwen was right. Although spiritual power was extremely important to oneself, it was still spiritual power after all. It was the source of power, but it couldn't be completely used as a weapon. Just like forging weapons, if one wanted to forge a weapon, one had to first crush the iron ore, purify it, and then forge it into shape, quench and grind it. The principle of spiritual power and forging weapons was the same. It was the source, the raw material, just like purified iron ingot. Using spiritual power directly as a weapon was like directly using iron ingots to smash people. Although there was a certain amount of power, compared to a forged weapon, the power was simply like heaven and earth. If one wanted to maximize the power of spiritual power, one needed a carrier of power, a move that could bear the power of spiritual power. Only in this way could the power of spiritual power be maximized. Blindly using spiritual power to attack directly was tantamount to holding a golden bowl and begging for rice. It seemed that he had to change his habit of blindly using spiritual power. Yi Fan thought that he couldn't always rely on the two divine weapons in his hands. Although the divine weapons were powerful, in the end, they were only weapons. As the saying went, forging iron depended on one's own strength. To improve one's own cultivation, creating one's own move was the foundation. What kind of move was powerful? Yi Fan began to recall the moves of all the experts he had seen and experienced. First of all, it was his brother Kim and the white-robed heavenly dragon. Yi Fan did not even dare to think about their move. One of them was the 8th-division heavenly dragon who had successfully transcended the tribulation, while the other was his brother Kim who had already existed before the heavenly court appeared. It was no different from a fool's dream to reach their level. Next was Hattori Kyanxio's 1,000 Sakura white bones. This move was grand and powerful. With his current cultivation level and ability to control the cold air, he could imitate this move. First, he would cover himself with a large skull made of ice, then fill the skull with cold air. Finally, he would spit out the cold air to attack his opponent. It looks quite intimidating. What should I call it? Frozen skull? Frost chi ice skull? When Yi Fan thought of this, he felt a little amused. Instead of using so many fancy tricks, he might as well directly use cold air to attack. Hattori Kyanxio's move was a special technique. If he were to imitate it, it would be like drawing a tiger from a cat. Next was Qi Yao's soul-eroding bone slash. Yi Fan recalled. This move was actually quite powerful. Its power was not below Hattori Kyanxio's 1,000 Sakura white bones. One sword turned into dozens of swords, circling and attacking continuously. Its momentum was astonishing. In addition to the Black King's cooperation, the moves were exquisite, and the strength was not bad. But then again, his snake shadow sword could not split into so many swords, and there was no Black King. He could not possibly use cold air to create a giant Iceman, right? If that was the case, he might as well imitate Hattori Kyanxio's move and create a frozen skull. That would not work either. Yi Fan closed his eyes and shook his head. Next was Kuju Junichiro. He was an expert. If not for Yi Ming's personal arrival, the Yi clan would not have survived the calamity. But Yi Fan thought about it carefully and decisively gave up on Kuju Junichiro's move. There was not much difference between Kuju Junichiro using the Blade Chi Tornado to protect himself and him using the Cold Chi to protect himself. The reason why Kuju Junichiro was so powerful was because of his 1,000 years of cultivation. With that kind of cultivation, any move he used would be the ultimate move of the ultimate move. He was only in his 20s, so it was impossible for him to reach that level. Next was Yi Ming. Yi Ming was able to break Kuju Junichiro's blood chrysanthemum sword in one move. His high cultivation and strength had left a deep impression on Yi Fan. Try to figure out Yi Ming's moves? Haha, as soon as this thought appeared in Yi Fan's mind, he laughed. The Night Ancestor, Yi Ming, did not use any complicated moves at all. He just waved his blade casually and solved all the problems. How could he imitate him? Continue. Yi Fan continued thinking. Jinchan Wu Do. Yi Fan skipped the two of them. They walked the path of sorcery, which was completely different from his own. Silver pole? Yes, his torrential heavens net was not bad. It was simple, direct, had a wide range, and was powerful. But was there any difference between this and the cold air he released? There was no difference. The next expert was the blue-clothed man. His moves were clean and neat. He was good at using consecutive moves and was never sloppy. Strength, speed, and sword art. The three of them complemented each other perfectly. Especially his consecutive moves. Each move was faster than the last and stronger than the last. It was impossible to guard against. Yi Fan believed that he was proficient in sword arts. Ever since he was young, his father had been collecting all kinds of sword arts. He was influenced by his father and learned many sword arts. Before meeting the blue-clothed man, he felt that he was a top expert in terms of sword arts. However, after meeting the blue-clothed man, he realized that he was wrong. In front of the blue-clothed man, his sword arts, which he thought were superb, were not worth mentioning. In fact, it was not only him. Compared to the East Camp's sword arts, the sword arts of the Central Plains had a disadvantage. They were more flowery. Many of the feints were pleasing to the eye but useless. The Japanese's sword arts were different. Their sword arts were very practical. There were not so many flowery moves. The sword arts were swift and fierce. They were fast, accurate, and ruthless. If it was combined with movement and special techniques, its power would be greatly increased. Yi Fan learned a lot from the blue-clothed man. The consistency of the moves, the practicality of the movement, and the decisiveness of the actions. Yi Fan kept all these in mind. Regardless of friend or foe, as long as it was a good point, he had to learn humbly. After the blue-clothed man, it was Cui Ziwen's turn. Like Yi Ming, Cui Ziwen's cultivation was so high that he could not imagine it. When he was at his peak, Cui Ziwen only used a gold coin to send him flying. When the ice dragon was unsealed, and he absorbed the spiritual power of the blood phoenix, Cui Ziwen resolved all his moves with one move. What kind of cultivation did he have to be to do that? Chapter 235. But that blue-clothed man, Yi Fan felt that it was a bit troublesome. Not only could this person break his dozens of feet high spiritual energy wall with a single palm, his cultivation was also very high. His movement technique did not lose to his own, and he could even block the mysterious heaven palm that he had comprehended from the mysterious heaven secret manual. Even though Yi Fan had not used his full strength back then, he could sense that the man in green seemed to be hiding his true strength as well. As for why he had done so, Yi Fan did not know. Back then, he had only wanted to save his beloved wife, and did not think too much about anything else. Although the blue-clothed man was strong, he was not what Yi Fan was most worried about. What worried Yi Fan the most was the white-clothed man. He had heard from Fujiwara no Chiko that her master, Ito Fumio, had told her that the white-clothed man's cultivation was far above the blue-clothed man's. The blue-clothed man's cultivation was not worth a single cent to the white-clothed man. What kind of cultivation did the white-clothed man have that it could make Ito Fumio say these kinds of words? Thinking of this, Yi Fan's brows tightly knit. The blue-clothed man, the white-clothed man, the gecko spirit, Xie Tian. These first-class experts made him feel pressured. Adding in his senior sister Kuang Hua and brother White Tiger's words about his wife Fujiwara no Chiko's calamity, Yi Fan's heart was anxious and he opened his eyes. Yi Fan thought to himself, "It's urgent to increase my cultivation." He had seriously studied the second layer of the mysterious Heaven Secret Manual's Qi refining technique. The second layer of the cultivation technique was at least 10 times stronger than the first layer, and the risks that came with it would naturally increase by several times. But at this time, he could not blindly cultivate like before. When he forcefully cultivated the first layer, it was already considered lucky that he did not suffer from cultivation deviation. According to the manual, after cultivating the first layer, he needed to continue cultivating. After cultivating for 3 years, when the liquid spiritual energy in his qi si was completely filled, he could then continue cultivating the second layer. Although the spiritual energy in his qi si was completely filled, it was still in a half-gaseous and half-liquid state, completely chaotic. According to the normal speed, he still needed 3 years, but time waits for no one. He urgently needed strength now. Only with strong strength could he protect his beloved woman. What to do? Xian Tian's secret would not be able to continue cultivating for a short period of time. Other than spiritual energy, he only had the snake shadow and Li Hua, these 2 divine weapons. As Yi Fan thought about it, his gaze fell upon the 2 divine weapons beside him. Wait a minute, cold air? When Yi Fan saw the 2 godly weapons, he had an idea. Since he was good at using cold air, why not draw the cold air of the snake shadow into his body, and then use the spiritual energy in his qi si to activate it? In this way, without using the snake shadow sword, wouldn't he be able to directly release cold air from his body? Thinking of this, Yi Fan excitedly stood up. He had been in contact with the snake's shadow sword since he was a child. Without any spiritual energy, he could already adapt to 20% of the snake's shadow sword's cold chi. Now that he had a lot of spiritual energy, drawing the cold air into his body should not be a big problem. As soon as he said it, Yi Fan put the snake's shadow sword back on his waist. Then, he concentrated and used his telekinesis to draw the cold air from the snake's shadow sword into his body slowly from his dantian. After cultivating the qi cultivation method in the Xian Tian secret, Yi Fan not only had abundant spiritual energy in his qi si, but also in his 8 extraordinary meridians, 12 meridians, and even his blood. Therefore, when the cold air from the snake's shadow sword entered his body, the cold air did not backfire like last time at the Zhou mansion. Once the cold air entered his body, Yi Fan immediately used his telekinesis to mobilize the spiritual energy in his body to protect his 8 extraordinary meridians and 12 meridians. He also guided the cold air slowly and carefully through his meridians, finally gathering in the depths of his qi si, forming a fist-sized ball of cold air that shone with white light. For safety reasons, Yi Fan mobilized a portion of the liquid spiritual energy in his qi si to wrap around the ball of cold air to prevent it from going berserk. Phew! Yi Fan stopped absorbing the cold air and let out a long breath. Luckily, the first step was successfully completed. The next step was to control the cold air in his body. Although the cold air had safely entered his body, it was hard to say whether or not he could control it. After all, the cold air was not spiritual energy. If he could not control it, everything he did could be said to be in vain. Thinking of this, Yi Fan began to carefully use his telekinesis to move the ball of liquid spiritual energy that was wrapped around the ball of cold air. Under the control of Yi Fan's telekinesis, the ball of cold air smoothly moved to the left and right. There was no sign of obstruction at all. Not bad, Yi Fan was secretly delighted. Although the cold air ball and spiritual energy did not merge, there was no conflict. Originally, he was worried that the two might repel each other, but it seemed that his worries were unnecessary. The next step was the most important one. That was to use spiritual energy to stimulate the ball of cold air in his body and draw the cold air out of his body. If it was successful, it would prove that this method was feasible. Yi Fan began to stimulate the cold air in his body. He first used a trace of spiritual energy to stimulate the ball of cold air a few times. The ball of cold air was very sensitive. It reacted differently according to the amount of spiritual energy. Yi Fan did this to test the stability of the ball of cold air. It had to be known that the ball of cold air had completely broken away from the control of the snake's shadow sword. More importantly, it was now in his body. If it went berserk, the consequences would be unimaginable. Seeing that the ball of cold air was relatively stable, Yi Fan began to slowly exert force. He used less than half of his spiritual energy to stimulate the ball of cold air. Buzz! Under the stimulation of Yi Fan's spiritual energy, the ball of cold air in his body began to expand slightly and at the same time, emitted a dazzling white light. The entire qi si was suddenly filled with light. The cold air that was stimulated by the spiritual energy was firmly compressed in the ball of cold air, and did not spread out. This made Yi Fan overjoyed. It seemed that there should be no problem. Yi Fan, who was looking inside his qi si, saw that the ball of cold air was operating steadily. He then used his spiritual energy to slowly open a gap in the liquid spiritual energy that enveloped the ball of cold air. He then used half of his spiritual energy to stimulate the ball of cold air in his body. The ball of cold air in Yi Fan's body began to slowly rotate under the stimulation of the 10% spiritual energy. At the same time, it quickly released cold air and quickly rushed out through the gap opened by the liquid spiritual energy. Yi Fan was already prepared. The moment the cold air rushed out of his body, he quickly mobilized the spiritual energy in his 12 meridians and 8 extraordinary meridians. He formed a tube-shaped spiritual energy channel with the spiritual energy in his meridians. This way, not only could he protect his meridians from being invaded by the cold air, he could also let the cold air flow smoothly through his meridians and reach any part of his body. Shwa! The white light and biting cold air quickly flowed through Yi Fan's meridians. Good, let's test the power of this cold air. Yi Fan quickly used his spiritual energy to guide the cold air in his body to the center of his palm. Then, he suddenly opened his eyes and threw a palm at the full moon pavilion that was 3 zhang away from him. Shwa! A white beam of light as thick as a thumb suddenly burst out from Yi Fan's palm and headed straight for the full moon pavilion. Boom! The white light shone and the cold air was thick and dense. The entire full moon pavilion was immediately shrouded in a thick white mist. This method was indeed feasible. Yi Fan stood up excitedly and went directly to the full moon pavilion. When the cold mist completely dispersed, the scene in front of him made Yi Fan so excited that he could hardly believe it. The entire full moon pavilion, including the stone table and chairs, was now covered in a layer of silver. It was completely frozen with a transparent ice shell that was more than an inch thick. Success! Yi Fan looked at his hands and thought excitedly. Only using 10% of his spiritual energy to stimulate the fist-sized ball of cold air was able to produce such power. Yi Fan was already very satisfied with this result. If he absorbed more of the cold air from the snake shadow sword and then used his rich spiritual energy to stimulate it, the power could be imagined. Chapter 236. Dongying, Kyoto. Tokugawa Ieyasu's mansion. In the spacious and luxurious wooden house, Tokugawa Ieyasu, who was wearing a black robe, sat comfortably on the tatame. He held an exquisite white porcelain cup in his hand and quietly watched the snowflakes outside the door. Beside him, a simple stove was burning brightly. On the stove, a simple iron pot was boiling fragrant tea. The steam was dense, and the fragrance of the tea filled the air. There was a simple wooden table in front of him, and an exquisite tea set was placed on top of the wooden table. On the tall sword rack behind him, 7 swords of different lengths were placed horizontally on it. In the flower pond outside the door, a red plum blossomed proudly. The red plum blossom was ancient and handsome. In the heavy snow, it swayed gently in the slight cold wind. It looked extremely delicate, like a dancing flame. Tokugawa Ieyasu loved snowy days the most. Every time it started to snow, he would reject all his official business and return to the mansion. He would sit alone in the house and then open the door wide. He would drink tea and drink wine while admiring the snowy scenery. It was only at this time that he could calm his heart down. Today, it was snowing heavily and the plum blossoms were blooming in the garden. Tokugawa Ieyasu was in a good mood. He rejected all his official business early and quietly drank tea and enjoyed the scenery alone in the house. General! Outside the side door, a woman's voice sounded. There's a guest outside the door. Tokugawa Ieyasu looked a little displeased. Didn't I tell you not to see anyone at this time? The woman outside the door was one of his personal guards. She was mainly responsible for Tokugawa Ieyasu's safety and food in the mansion. She knew her habits very well. What was going on today? Tokugawa Ieyasu was confused. General. The woman outside the door said respectfully, Yes, the person outside is Yagyu. Yagyu? Tokugawa Ieyasu asked impatiently, Which Yagyu? General, it's Yagyu Ryanosuk. The woman's tone was very serious. Yagyu Ryanosuk? Tokugawa Ieyasu was shocked when he heard the name. He immediately put down the white porcelain cup in his hand and quickly walked to the side door. He pushed the sliding door open. Outside the side door, a woman in a bright red kimono was kneeling there. Her hair was tied up in a bun, her skin was like snow, and her face was like the rosy clouds of the morning sun. Are you sure it's him? Tokugawa Ieyasu lowered his head and asked the woman kneeling there. It is indeed him. The woman lowered her head and said, "How are you sure?" Tokugawa Ieyasu asked again. "The saber on his body is the black dragon saber," the woman replied. "It's really him?" Tokugawa Ieyasu sounded excited. "Then what are you waiting for? Quick, invite him in." "Yes." The woman kneeling on the floor bowed and nodded. "No, no, no," Tokugawa Ieyasu said as he walked quickly into the room. "Keiko, hurry up and change my clothes. I'll do it myself." The woman outside the door immediately stood up and walked into the room. She helped Tokugawa Ieyasu change his clothes. In Dongying, other than the emperor, the only person who could make Tokugawa Ieyasu personally welcome him was Yagyu Ryuk. This person was like a legend in Japan. Everyone knew about him, but very few people had actually seen him. It was rumored that this person was the reincarnation of a black dragon. When he was born, a black dragon appeared in the sky above his house. What was even more amazing was that this person was born with a black dragon-shaped birthmark on his right arm. The head, eyes, scales, and body were very lifelike. His father saw that this child was born with auspicious signs and a black dragon, so he named him Ryuk. Not long after Ryuk was born, an envoy from Ise Grand Shrine came. This Ise Grand Shrine was a national shrine in Japan that worshipped the Amaterasu god. It was made up of 2 shrines. The outer shrine worshipped the harvest god, while the inner shrine worshipped the Amaterasu god. This Ise Grand Shrine was very mysterious in Japan. Every 20 years, it would be burned down and rebuilt. It kept one of the 3 divine weapons that symbolized imperial power, the Yata no Kagami. It was rumored that the Amaterasu god once said that seeing this mirror was like seeing her real body. There were hundreds of clergy in the shrine. There were 2 highest positions, called the head of sacrifice and the grand palace secretary. The head of sacrifice had to be a woman, but the grand palace secretary didn't have any special requirements. Every year, at a certain time, the emperor would personally come to Ise Grand Shrine to pray for peace and prosperity. Seeing that the envoy from Ise Grand Shrine had come, Ryuk's parents didn't dare to be slow. They hurriedly knelt down and bowed. The envoy told them that this child was the reincarnation of the black dragon under the Amaterasu god. This time, they were bringing this child back to the shrine. When Ryuk's parents heard this news, they were overjoyed. One had to know that it was already a great honor to be able to enter Ise Grand Shrine to serve the Amaterasu god. Now that they knew that their child was the black dragon under the Amaterasu god, they were even more overjoyed. After saying a few words of blessings, the envoy brought the newly born Ryuk back to Ise Grand Shrine. This Ryuk was the reincarnation of the black dragon. In addition, he had been nurtured and blessed by the clergy in the shrine. In just 18 years, he had grown into a young expert with unfathomable cultivation and mysterious spells. It was rumored that whenever a monster appeared in Japan, Ryuk would appear there. After subduing the monster, he would return to the shrine. The black dragon sword in his hand was said to be given to him by the Amaterasu god himself. It was used to slay monsters and demons. Its power was amazing. There was once someone who went out to sea at night to fish. He saw a young man with a long sword and dragon tattoos on his arm fighting with a strange fish in the sea. He also saw the power of the black dragon's sword with his own eyes. It was said that there was a black dragon coiling around the blade. When the strange fish spirit saw the sword, it obediently surrendered without any resistance. Of course, these were only rumors. Other than the people from Ise Grand Shrine, no one had really seen Ryuk's true face. Even Tokugawa Ieyasu had only seen the black dragon's sword placed beside the altar in Ise Grand Shrine. The female guard named Keiko had also seen the black dragon sword because she was with Tokugawa Ieyasu at that time. Who else could wield the black dragon sword other than Ryuk? Tokugawa Ieyasu thought as he changed into a simple and solemn formal suit. He had grown up listening to the rumors of the dragon realm. He had always hoped that one day he would be able to see this legendary hero with his own eyes. Now that Ryuk had personally come to visit, how could he not be happy? After dressing up, Tokugawa Ieyasu quickly walked out of the house and came to the door. Keiko held the umbrella for Tokugawa Ieyasu and followed closely behind. She was his personal guard. No matter where Tokugawa Ieyasu went, she had to follow him closely. After Tokugawa Ieyasu tidied up his clothes, he personally opened the door respectfully. Chapter 237. What was strange was that although the sky was filled with fascia, not a single snowflake fell on him. "Greetings, General." After the door opened, Long Jijia bowed to Tokugawa Ieyasu. "I'm Yagyu Long Jijia. Please forgive me for disturbing the General's enjoyment of the snow." "How can you be so polite?" Tokugawa Ieyasu quickly bowed back. When Keiko saw Tokugawa Ieyasu bow, she immediately lowered her head and bowed to Long Jijia. "General," Long Jijia stood up and said, "I have something important to tell you this time." "Sir, if you have something to say, please come in," Tokugawa Ieyasu said as he flashed and extended his hand. "Please come in." Long Jijia nodded slightly and stepped into the courtyard. After entering the room, the two of them knelt on the opposite side of the tea table. Keiko put the umbrella aside and began to pour tea for the two of them. "Please have tea." After pouring tea for Tokugawa Ieyasu, Keiko placed a cup of freshly brewed tea on the wooden table in front of Long Jijia. Long Jijia nodded slightly to Keiko. After Keiko bowed to the two of them, she retreated to the door with small steps and closed the wooden sliding door with both hands. "Sir, why have you come in the snow?" Tokugawa Ieyasu was the first to speak. "To be honest, General, I'm here for you," Long Jijia said as he bowed slightly. "For me?" Tokugawa Ieyasu asked doubtfully. "Yes," Long Jijia replied. "Please enlighten me." Tokugawa Ieyasu went straight to the point. Facing the legendary Long Jijia, Tokugawa Ieyasu felt a lot of emotions. According to the time, Long Jijia was at least 60 years old, but he looked at most 30 years old. It could be seen that this person was indeed as rumored. His cultivation was unfathomable. "General, have you sent Minister Matsumoto Takeyoshi to the Great Ming Dynasty?" Long Jijia asked. "That's right," Tokugawa Ieyasu replied. "I did send him to the Great Ming Dynasty. It's been more than half a year." "Sir, why are you suddenly asking about this? When will he be back?" Long Jijia asked. "Japan is thousands of miles away from the Great Ming Dynasty. Just the round trip will take 2 to 3 months, Tokugawa Ieyasu said. "In a few more months we should be able to return to Japan." "General, you have been wise all your life, but you are foolish for a moment." Long Jijia picked up the white porcelain cup. "To tell you the truth, General, you have been deceived by him." After he finished speaking, he took a sip of the fragrant tea. "Deceived?" Tokugawa Ieyasu frowned. What happened? Long Jijia's words made him feel that something was wrong. Outside the door, Huizi immediately frowned. "As far as I know, Matsumoto Takeyoshi's trip to the Great Ming Dynasty this time is not that simple," Long Jijia said as he placed the fragrant tea in his hand on the table. "What is his motive?" Tokugawa Ieyasu frowned as he asked Long Jijia. 9 cauldrons, Long Jijia replied solemnly. 9 cauldrons. Tokugawa Ieyasu was shocked. He knew a little about the rumors of the 9 cauldrons in the Central Plains. The one who obtained the 9 cauldrons would obtain the world. Could it be that this Matsumoto Takeyoshi wanted to seize the world of the Great Ming Dynasty? How is that possible? Tokugawa Ieyasu laughed. "Sir, you are thinking too much. Matsumoto Takeyoshi is a bit greedy, but he would definitely not have such an unrealistic idea." "General, you are still in the dark," Long Jijia said. "You think too simply of Matsumoto Takeyoshi. Do you know who has one of the 3 great divine weapons, the Sword of Kusanagi?" "The Sword of Kusanagi?" Tokugawa Ieyasu's heart moved. Sir, do you mean? It is in the hands of Matsumoto Takeyoshi, Long Jijie replied. The sword of Kusanagi is in his hands? Tokugawa Ieyasu was so shocked that the teacup in his hand almost fell to the ground. Is this true? Long Jijie nodded. How did you know about this? Tokugawa Ieyasu asked Long Jijie with a serious expression. General, do you still remember Fujiwara Kaga? Long Jijie did not directly answer Tokugawa Ieyasu's question. Fujiwara Kaga? Tokugawa Ieyasu was a bit unhappy when he heard this name. Demon Blade Muramasa? General, you have made a mistake in this matter, Long Jijie said to Tokugawa Ieyasu. Tokugawa Ieyasu looked at Long Jijie and did not speak. If it was someone else who spoke to him like this, he would have been beheaded. From the beginning to the end, this matter was caused by Matsumoto Takeyoshi alone. Seeing that Tokugawa Ieyasu was unhappy, Long Jijie told Tokugawa Ieyasu how Matsumoto Takeyoshi liked Miofa Chiho, how Matsumoto Takeyoshi was rejected by Fujiwara Kaga, and how Matsumoto Takeyoshi used Tokugawa Ieyasu to kill the Fujiwara family without concealing anything from Muramasa. After Tokugawa Ieyasu heard this, his face changed greatly, and he did not speak for a long time. He stood up and walked slowly to the main door. With a swish, the wooden door slid open. He looked at the fascia outside the door and was lost in thought. He wanted to calm himself down as soon as possible. If things were really as Long Jijie said, what he had done was simply unforgivable. Keiko, who was standing outside the door, frowned even more. General, you don't believe me? Long Jijie, who was kneeling in front of the wooden table, asked while drinking tea. How do you know these things? Tokugawa Ieyasu said while looking at the snow outside the house. To be honest, General, these things were told to me by Amaterasu Okami, Long Jijie said. Amaterasu Okami? Tokugawa Ieyasu immediately turned to look at Long Jijie after hearing these words. Is this true? I have no need to lie to you, General, Long Jijie replied. Tokugawa Ieyasu was silent. Long Jijie was right. He really had no need to lie to him. In the past, he also heard people around him say that Matsumoto Takeyoshi was not simple, but at that time, he did not take it seriously. Now it seemed that he was indeed careless. Even if he has the sword of Kusanagi in hand, what can he do? Tokugawa Ieyasu said as he closed the wooden door. He slowly walked to the opposite side of Long Jijie and sat down again. The Great Ming Dynasty has a vast territory and abundant resources. There are many talents and masters. He is just an ordinary person without the strength to truss a chicken. How can he find the divine weapon of the Great Ming Dynasty? General, you underestimate him too much. Long Jijie put down the white porcelain teacup in his hand and said slowly, This person is very shrewd, and there are many masters around him. As far as I know, there are no less than thousands of Buffon's Jonin subordinate. If you count the Chunin and Genin, I'm afraid the number is already tens of thousands. Tens of thousands? Tokugawa Ieyasu was shocked when he heard this number. In a small country like Dongying, having thousands of ordinary soldiers and horses was already considered strong. This Matsumoto Takeyoshi actually had tens of thousands of ninjas. However, Long Jijie's next words made Tokugawa Ieyasu unable to sit still. This is not a big deal, Long Jijie continued. I heard that Matsumoto Takeyoshi has an extremely mysterious army stationed in Dongying. The combat power of tens of thousands of ninjas is nothing compared to the combat power of this army of only a few hundred people. Mysterious army? What mysterious army? Long Jijie's words made Tokugawa Ieyasu stunned. He did not understand who the mysterious army Long Jijie was talking about was. There were only a few hundred people, but their combat power was far greater than that of tens of thousands of well-trained ninjas. Chapter 238. Black Feather? The legendary Black Feather? Tokugawa Ieyasu was stunned at first, Then his expression changed drastically. He straightened up and asked anxiously, "Do you mean, that's right? This mysterious army of hundreds of people is made up of black feather ninjas?" Long Jijia put down the teapot, picked up the tea, and gently blew it. Hearing this, Tokugawa Ieyasu sat down heavily. The combat power of tens of thousands of ninjas had already shocked him. Now, he heard from Long Jijia that Matsumoto Takeyoshi had a black feather army made up of hundreds of black feather ninjas. Tokugawa Ieyasu's heart fell into an ice hole. Just those tens of thousands of ninjas were enough for Matsumoto Takeyoshi to have the power to divide the world with him. If this black feather army was added, Tokugawa Ieyasu didn't dare to think further. He knew the strength of the black feather ninjas best, because Keiko outside the door was a black feather ninja. He had seen Keiko's ability with his own eyes when he was choosing his personal bodyguards. 10 superior ninjas used their ultimate skills to attack Keiko at the same time. Keiko didn't even draw her sword, and in one move, all 10 of them were severely injured. This was even when Keiko was in a state of learning from each other. He couldn't imagine the power of hundreds of black feather ninjas like Keiko gathered together. Keiko outside the door frowned, and her face was solemn. "If what you said is true, why is Matsumoto Takeyoshi willing to be my minister? With his strength, wouldn't it be easy for him to replace me?" Tokugawa Ieyasu was a veteran after all, so he quickly calmed down. To say something disrespectful, Long Jijia held the teacup and said, "General, your position is nothing to him. He's interested in the world of the Ming dynasty." Tokugawa Ieyasu was silent. Long Jijia was right. With Matsumoto Takeyoshi's strength, his position was nothing to him. Compared to the vast Ming dynasty, the small Dongying couldn't even be considered a province of the Ming dynasty. Matsumoto Takeyoshi naturally coveted Great Ming dynasty. Amaterasu Great God also told me that Matsumoto Takeyoshi has secretly worshipped the evil god Sietian as his master. Sietian is an ancient evil god of Japan and his cultivation is extremely high. Even Amaterasu Great God has to be wary of him. Mentioning Sietian, Long Jijia's expression became serious. With Sietian's help, Matsumoto Takeyoshi's chances of winning have greatly increased. Phew! Tokugawa Ieyasu let out a long sigh and stood up. He walked to the door and opened it again. This time, he didn't open it to admire the snow scenery, but to let the cold wind outside wake him up. Over 10,000 ninjas, the Black Feather Army, the Kusanagi sword, and the help of the evil god Sietian. I think it won't be long before Matsumoto Takeyoshi will be able to rule the world. Tokugawa Ieyasu's words revealed a trace of helplessness. Thinking of how he normally favored Matsumoto Takeyoshi, Tokugawa Ieyasu closed his eyes and shook his head. He felt that he was a complete idiot. He was being played in the palm of someone else's hand and he was still enjoying it. He understood in his heart that once Matsumoto Takeyoshi became the emperor of the Great Ming dynasty, what would happen next? Wouldn't his small country have to pay tribute year after year and become a subject every year? If he lowered his head to Matsumoto Takeyoshi, who used to be his subject, and became a subject, wouldn't he become the laughingstock of the world if this was spread out? Where would the Tokugawa clan put their face? Perhaps the only thing he could do at that time was commit suicide and die for his country. Pah! Thinking of this, Tokugawa Ieyasu slapped the door frame with his hand. General doesn't need to worry too much. If it really was like this, I wouldn't have needed to come to General's door today. Long Jijia softly said. When Tokugawa Ieyasu heard this, he was first stunned before immediately reacting. He turned around and quickly walked over to Long Jijia. What does Mr. mean? From Long Jijia's words, he could hear that there was still a chance. I won't hide it from General. I came this time to help General and solve your worries. Long Jijia said. There's still a chance? Tokugawa Ieyasu's eyes lit up. Matsumoto Takeyoshi is indeed strong. Recently I heard that he transferred 13 peak experts from Japan and their cultivations are not low. From this, it seems that his actions in the Great Ming Dynasty are not very smooth. Long Zhijie put down the teacup in his hand and said, like General said, the Great Ming Dynasty has many talents and experts. If Matsumoto Takeyoshi wants to smoothly achieve his ambitions, it won't be that easy. Mr.'s meaning is that Matsumoto Takeyoshi's actions in the Great Ming Dynasty are blocked? Tokugawa Ieyasu asked. That's right. I heard the great god Amaterasu say that a peak expert from the Great Song Dynasty has already reincarnated. This person is destined to be Xie Tian's nemesis. Long Zhijie said seriously. The great god Amaterasu also told me that the 9 supreme cauldrons have experts secretly protecting them. So even if Xie Tian and Matsumoto Takeyoshi work together, it won't be easy to obtain the 9 supreme cauldrons. So it's like this. Tokugawa Ieyasu slowly nodded. Speaking like this, there was still a chance. Tokugawa Ieyasu's extinguished confidence was once again ignited. As the saying goes, if the name isn't right, then the words won't follow. Long Zhijie said to Tokugawa Ieyasu, this time I received the great god Amaterasu's order to visit General. I ask General to give the General's order and I will immediately head to the Great Ming Dynasty. Mr. wants to go to the Great Ming Dynasty? Tokugawa Ieyasu asked in pleasant surprise. If Long Zhijie personally went, their chances of success would be even higher. That's right. I'm prepared to secretly work with the righteous people of the Great Ming Dynasty to deal with Matsumoto Takeyoshi. Long Zhijie said. That's great. Tokugawa Ieyasu happily said, with Mr. personally going, we will definitely be able to return victorious. Long Zhijie smiled and didn't say anything. To be honest, he didn't know if this trip to the Great Ming Dynasty would be able to stop Matsumoto Takeyoshi. After all, Xie Tian was an ancient evil god and his strength was unfathomable. From the current situation, only by working with the experts of the Great Ming Dynasty would they have a chance of winning. Mister, there is something I don't understand. I ask Mister to enlighten me. Tokugawa Ieyasu was happy, but he suddenly thought of something. General, please ask. Long Zhijie replied. Since the great god Amaterasu already knew about Matsumoto Takeyoshi's ambition, why didn't he arrange for Mr. to inform me beforehand? Tokugawa Ieyasu asked. That way we could have prepared ahead of time. We could have eliminated Matsumoto Takeyoshi before his wings were fully grown. Why did he have to wait until today to have Mr. inform me? Chapter 239. If that's the case, then what can I do for you? Tokugawa Ieyasu didn't expect Matsumoto Takeyoshi to have such a background. It's very simple, Long Zhijie said to Tokugawa Ieyasu. You can give me the position of a special envoy, then give me a warship and bring a few sailors. That's all? Tokugawa Ieyasu asked. Don't you need more people? That's enough. It'll be troublesome if you bring more people, Long Zhijie said. Tokugawa Ieyasu thought for a long time, then he turned around and took a golden sword from the sword rack behind him and handed it to Long Zhijie. This is a precious sword given to me by the Emperor. You can take this sword as a special envoy token. If there are any Dongying people who don't agree with you, you can use this sword to kill them. His meaning was obvious. If Matsumoto Takeyoshi didn't agree with him, Long Zhijie could use this sword to kill him first and report later. Long Zhijie took the sword with both hands. Whoosh! Long Zhijie pulled the sword out half a foot and looked at it carefully. The sword was 4 feet long, completely golden, and extremely beautiful. The whole sword was shining and cold, and the word Tokugawa was engraved on the blade. Good sword, Long Zhijie said as he put the sword back into the sheath. The Ming Dynasty is far away from here. I'll give you an attendant to take care of your meals and daily life. I hope you won't refuse, Tokugawa Ieyasu said as he shouted outside the door, Keiko? Whoosh! The wooden sliding door opened from the outside, and Keiko, dressed in red, stood outside the door respectfully. General, Keiko answered with her head down. From now on, you're Mr. Yagyu's attendant, Tokugawa Ieyasu said to her. You heard what I said just now. You have to take good care of Mr. Yagyu. Do you hear me? Tokugawa Ieyasu seemed to have emphasized the words, take good care of Mr. Yagyu. Yes, Keiko pursed her lips and said with her head down. Mr. Yagyu, I'll leave Keiko to you. Tokugawa Ieyasu turned to Long Jijie and said, she's also a Black Feathers ninja. You can use her. This. Long Jijie glanced at Wheezy, who was standing there with her head lowered. Why aren't you coming over to greet Sir? Tokugawa Ieyasu didn't continue Long Jijie's words and directly said to Keiko. When Keiko heard Tokugawa Ieyasu's words, she immediately walked to Long Jijie in small steps and curtsied. Yamada Keiko greets you, sir. Please advise me. Miss Wheezy is too polite. Long Jijie quickly stood up and returned the greeting. When will you depart? Tokugawa Ieyasu asked. We will leave tonight, Long Jijie replied. All right, I'll get someone to prepare it for you, Tokugawa Ieyasu said. Then I'll have to trouble you, General. Long Jijie bowed slightly. I'll take my leave now. Tokugawa Ieyasu nodded. I will send you out to sea tonight. That won't be necessary, Long Jijie said. This matter shouldn't be publicized. I appreciate your kindness, General. I see. Tokugawa Ieyasu pondered for a moment and said, All right then, I wish you a safe trip. Long Jijie bowed to Tokugawa Ieyasu and then turned to leave. Take care, General. I'm leaving. Yamada Keiko bowed to Tokugawa Ieyasu. Be careful, Tokugawa Ieyasu said to Yamada Keiko, who was kneeling on the ground. Yamada Keiko got up and closed the wooden door after walking out. Tokugawa Ieyasu stood there quietly in the room. He had a purpose for letting Yamada Keiko follow Long Jijie. Since Matsumoto Takeyoshi had hundreds of Black Feathers ninjas, no one could be sure that Yamada Keiko was not a spy he had arranged around him. Letting her follow Long Jijie could be a convenient favor. First, he could let Keiko leave him. Second, if Keiko was really Matsumoto Takeyoshi's people, then he could use Long Jijie to get rid of her. That was Tokugawa Ieyasu's principle of using people. When Yamada Keiko walked into the courtyard with the red umbrella, Long Jijie was standing at the door waiting for her. She walked quickly to Long Jijie and handed the red umbrella in her hand to him. Please wait for me, sir. I'll be back soon. Long Jijie took the red umbrella and quietly watched her turn and walk back to the courtyard. Clap, clap, clap. Yamada Keiko walked to the center of the courtyard and clapped her hands 3 times. Swish, swish, swish. On the roof, on the trees, and in the snow, more than a dozen masked ninjas in white rushed out and knelt on one knee in front of Yamada Keiko. These ninjas were responsible for protecting Tokugawa Ieyasu's guards. They were all top ninjas and had always been under the command of Yamada Keiko. No matter if it was windy or rainy or cold, these ninjas would lie in ambush in every corner of the courtyard. It was snowing heavily today. These ninjas were all lying in ambush in the thick snow. When they saw Yamada Keiko send a signal, they quickly showed up. I'm going on a long journey. In the future, I'll leave the general's safety to you. Yamada Keiko said calmly and bowed to salute the ninjas. After hearing Yamada Keiko's words, the ninjas who were kneeling on one knee raised their heads and looked at Yamada Keiko. Then, they lowered their heads and saluted in unison. Don't worry, Sect Master. We will not disappoint you. A white-masked ninja in the middle said, May Sect Master return safely soon. Disperse. Yamada Keiko said. Swish, swish, swish. The shadows of the ninjas swayed and returned to their positions. These ninjas had extremely high cultivation. They appeared in an instant and disappeared in the blink of an eye. They didn't even leave a trace on the snow. Sir, let's go. Yamada Keiko walked in front of Long Jijie and took the red umbrella from his hand. Long Jijia nodded and the two slowly went out. Tokugawa Ieyasu quietly looked at everything in front of him through the window. He was expressionless. Mongolia. Night. In the big tent, a 7 feet tall iron furnace stood in the center. The iron furnace was simple and unadorned. It was cyan all over. 3 thick furnace legs supported the iron furnace that weighed 1,000 pounds. Around the furnace, a fire dragon with glaring eyes and 4 claws on auspicious clouds was engraved on it. The dragon's head was above the furnace, and the dragon's tail was below the furnace. It coiled around the furnace 3 times. Below the furnace there were 8 small windows in 8 directions. 8 fiery red tongues of flame shot out from the small windows. They were about half a foot long. The blazing flames illuminated the entire Mongolian tent in a fiery red color. In order to allow the air to flow smoothly, a 5 feet wide circular opening was opened at the top of the tent. The rising heat rolled out of this circular opening. Yi Yun, dressed in plain clothes, was meditating on a cloud bed about 10 feet away from the furnace. Outside the big tent, Yi Kong and Yi Chen were standing at the door, vigilantly looking around. Yi Yun was forging a sword. Chapter 240. The Yi family's craftsmanship was exquisite, and the items they made were unique and durable. They quickly became popular in the Mongolian Empire. As for these items, Yi Yun ordered that they would not be charged a single cent as long as they brought their own materials. The craftsmanship was free of charge. Furthermore, Yi Yun had ordered that everyone had to pay for their meals. The Mongol Empire was nomadic, and they weren't rich. The Yi family members that Yi Yun had brought with him numbered in the hundreds. It was fine for them to have 1 or 2 meals, but if they had good wine and meat every day, no one would be able to handle it. As for the Yi family members, what they did not lack the least was money. Since Yi Yun had ordered them to leave the Mongolian Empire in advance, the Yi clan had ordered their clansmen to withdraw all their belongings from the great Ming dynasty. Therefore, the Yi clan's clansmen were not affected by the confiscation of their possessions. Which one of these clansmen didn't have 8 to 10,000 taels of pocket money on them? Although Yi Yun ordered the Yi family members to work, he made one thing clear. They could occasionally forge a few weapons for others, but they could not forge a large number of weapons for the Mongolian Empire. The Yi family's craftsmanship was famous throughout the world. Many foreign countries had secretly sent people to rope in the Yi family to work for them. However, Yi Yun had always rejected them. Although the Mongolian Empire treated the Yi family well, they could not throw away their principles. On this day, Yi Yun inadvertently saw the scroll in his bosom. Only then did he remember that he had promised Ming Yu of the Purple Sun Temple to forge a sword for him. When he opened the scroll that Ming Yu had given him, Yi Yun could not help but blurt out, "Good sword." He had personally forged no less than a dozen divine weapons and had seen countless high-grade sword. However, this was the first time he had seen a sword like the one in the scroll. On the scroll, there were no less than a dozen detailed designs. The design of the hilt, the thickness and length of the scabbard, the engravings, the angle of the sword tip, the handling of the blade, and even the design of the sword tassel were all on the scroll. All of the designs were broken down and enlarged. The degree of detail could be said to be accurate and clear at a glance. The reason why Yi Yun was certain that this was a good sword even before it was forged was not only because of the detailed blueprint, but also because Yi Yun was impressed by the materials listed on the scroll. These forging materials were extremely precious and rare in the world. Black gold, meteoric iron, purple gold stone, any one of them was worth 1,000 gold taels. Not only that, but the combination of materials in the scroll was also very reasonable. If he hadn't seen it with his own eyes, he wouldn't have believed that this scroll came from a 7 or 8-year-old child. Fortunately, Yi Yun had these precious materials in his hands. Before the matter was exposed, these materials were all secretly transported from the ancestral home to Tubo. This time, when he came to the Mongol Empire, he brought these rare materials and the coiling dragon true flame furnace with him. This time, he had brought a total of more than 2,000 kilograms of high-quality sword forging materials. However, when it came to top-quality sword forging materials like the one in the scroll, there was less than 100 kilograms. This nearly 50 kilograms of material was something that could only be discovered but not sought. It had been passed down from generation to generation in the Yi clan, and had been accumulated over time. To be honest, even when forging a sword for the emperor, they had never used these materials. If he wanted to forge this sword for the little Taoist boy, he would need at least 5 kilograms of top-quality materials. If it was someone else, Yi Yun would definitely not agree. However, this time it was not someone else. This time, in order to save his granddaughter-in-law Fujiwara no Chiko, the little Taoist boy had put in a lot of effort. Moreover, he had personally promised him, so how could he go back on his word? On this day, Yi Yun looked at the stars and saw the Big Dipper shining brightly. He knew that it was a good day to forge a sword. Thus, he secretly ordered Yi Kong and Yi Chen to move the coiling dragon true flame furnace, which weighed over 1,000 kilograms, into the tent at night. This coiling dragon true flame furnace was a treasure passed down from generation to generation in the Yi clan. Yi Yun's snow thread sword was forged from this furnace. When Yi Kong and Yi Chen saw that Yi Yun was using the coiling dragon true flame furnace, they knew that Yi Yun wanted to forge a sword for the little Taoist boy. After putting away the true flame furnace, they tacitly went out of the tent to guard Yi Yun. It must be known that forging a divine weapon was no small matter. When Yi Yun was forging a sword, no one was allowed to enter and disturb him. Otherwise, not only would the precious materials in the furnace be instantly turned to dust, there might even be a tragedy of the furnace being destroyed. The reason for this was because the forging method in the weapon forging manual was completely different from ordinary sword forging method. Ordinary sword forging methods were not complicated. Selecting materials, calcining, forging, shaping, quenching, sharpening, and equipping were all done together. However, forging a good weapon was far from simple. Not only did it require excellent materials, it also required an auspicious time, an auspicious place, good charcoal, good quality spring water, and skilled forging techniques. The right time, the right place, and the right people were all indispensable. Even a top-notch weapon was so complicated, not to mention a godly weapon. Taking the weapon forging manual as an example, it was different from other sword forging method. The auspicious time for sword forging in the weapon forging manual was not fixed. It depended on the brightness of the Big Dipper that night. The bright Big Dipper refines the divine weapon, the dark Big Dipper forges the sword. It meant that the Big Dipper was only suitable for forging divine weapons when the Big Dipper was extremely bright. It was not suitable when the Big Dipper was dark. Furthermore, the geographical location of the forging of the divine weapon was also very important. They needed to find a pure land. The pure land referred to here was a clean land that had not been contaminated by evil energy and filth. Yi Yun's big tent was personally built by barter. The land was flat and clean. It was the most suitable. Even so, Yi Yun still carefully scented the area with sandalwood, not daring to be careless. Finally, there was harmony. This was the most important part. Normally, the best charcoal was used to forge sword. However, Yi Yun did not use charcoal to forge swords. Instead, he used his own sword energy. First, he used sandalwood to ignite the fire. Then, he used his own true qi to ignite the flames. Using his own essence, qi, and spirit as firewood, he formed the raging flames used to forge the sword. This was also the reason why outsiders were not allowed to enter during the sword forging period. Once the sword forging started, the sword forger's essence, qi, and spirit would be completely focused on the flames. At the same time, He would have to use his mind to control the formless sword chi to shape the materials in the true fire furnace into the shape of a sword. This was a dynamic balance. He could not be careless in the slightest. He could not be fast or slow. If he was fast, the various materials would not be able to completely fuse before they were shaped. The divine weapon would not be able to achieve the effect of combining hardness and gentleness. If he was slow, the materials that had already been completely fused would not be shaped by the sword chi in time. Very soon, the flames in the furnace would boil and splatter everywhere. At that time, it would be as difficult as ascending to the heavens to want to shape it with sword chi. Therefore, he had to refine and fuse the materials while shaping them. This required the sword forger to have an extremely high level of sword chi cultivation and extremely strong willpower. Both were indispensable. If there was any external influence at this time, the balance of the sword forging would be broken. The consequences would be unimaginable. Before Yi Yun forged the sword, he had already used his sword chi to set up a barrier in the entire tent. Then, he drew a talisman on the round hole in the roof of the tent. The sword chi barrier was to prevent people from trespassing, and the secret talisman was to seal the sword chi that soared into the sky when the sword was forged. One had to know that the sword chi released when it was forged was the strongest moment. However, although the sword chi of the divine weapon was strong at this time, the sword body had just been formed and had not completely cooled down. Instead, it was the weakest moment. Forging a divine weapon was a matter of seizing the fortune of heaven and earth. It was extremely easy to attract the jealousy of ghosts and God. At this time, there would be many filthy evil spirits, mountain spirits, and wild monsters coming to cause trouble. They would either obstruct or steal the treasure. The talisman that Yi Yun drew was recorded in the weapon forging manual. It was called the Army Suppressing Talisman. Its purpose was to seal the sword chi that soared into the sky when the sword was forged, so as to avoid unnecessary trouble. Within the coiling dragon true flame furnace, the flames were blazing and rolling. Sitting cross-legged on the cloud bed, Yi Yun's forehead was already covered in dense beads of sweat. At this time, he did not have the time to wipe his sweat. He was concentrating on activating the flames in the furnace while injecting his essence, chi, and spirit into the furnace. Within the true flame furnace, more than 10 types of sword forging materials gradually melted under the refinement of Yi Yun's essence, chi, and spirit, forming a multicolored metallic liquid that shone brightly. Yi Yun had already sensed the changes in the furnace. He immediately activated the flames, so that the materials in the furnace could fuse as soon as possible. Under Yi Yun's control, the originally red flames quickly turned blue, and the temperature increased by several times. The molten liquids that had already melted began to flow together, slowly flowing to the bottom of the furnace, and began to gather. The molten liquids that had gathered together began to fuse together, emitting a dazzling green light. Now was the time. Yi Yun frowned, using his essence, chi, and spirit to push the flames in the coiling dragon true flame furnace to the extreme. Swish, swish, swish. Yi Yun pushed his essence, chi, and spirit to the extreme, so that his essence, chi, and spirit turned into 3 white lights, flowing out from the Baihui acupoint on the top of his head and quickly entering the true flame furnace. Within the true flame furnace, the blue flames instantly turned into a faint translucent green color. Perfection! The flames in the furnace had already reached the highest temperature. The fire dragon on the coiling dragon true flame furnace began to glow red, from the dragon's tail to the dragon's head, from the dragon's scales to the dragon's horns. In the blink of an eye, it turned into a ferocious red dragon with golden eyes. Within the true flame furnace, the molten liquids that had already completely fused emitted a dazzling green light as they quickly rotated. The time had come, begin the casting. Yi Yun thought. Swish! Countless white lights burst out from Yi Yun's body in an instant, quickly converging into 8 dazzling white lights, rushing into the coiling dragon true flame furnace through the 8 small windows below. Yi Yun's hair and beard stood up, his eyes tightly closed, releasing his sword energy to the extreme. 1. Under Yi Yun's control, the 8 sword energy instantly merged with the liquid, dazzling green molten liquid. Gulp. Gulp. After receiving Yi Yun's sword energy, the green molten liquid began to slowly gush upwards. As Yi Yun used his mind power to steadily control the sword energy, a sword hilt carved with a green red-crowned crane gradually took shape in the gurgling liquid, slowly moving upwards. Immediately after, a 3 feet long sword blade also appeared. Chapter 241. Screech! Right at this moment, a resounding cry of a crane was heard. A huge red-crowned crane, enshrouded in white light, descended from the sky along the roof of the tent. It flapped its huge wings and rushed into the coiling dragon true flame furnace in a flash. Boom! White light scattered in all directions. Yi Yun was dumbstruck. Ever since he started forging weapons, he had seen many auspicious signs, but nothing like this had ever happened before. 1. Just as Yi Yun was dumbstruck, the treasured sword in the furnace began to tremble, and countless green lights began to gather around it. It was sword chi. Yi Yun exclaimed, "What a powerful sword chi!" 1. The green light on the sword shone brightly, and even the coiling dragon true furnace was illuminated by the green light. Boom! A green light, 1 foot thick, instantly shot up from the true fire furnace. Boom! When the powerful sword chi reached the top of the tent, it was blocked by Yi Yun's secret talisman. It immediately changed its direction and circled around the coiling dragon true furnace in the tent. The dazzling green light forced Yi Yun to turn his head and cover his eyes with his long sleeve. 1. The berserk green sword chi quickly filled the entire tent, and it seemed to be getting more and more intense. Yi Chun and Yi Kong, who were guarding outside the tent, were alarmed by the noise in the tent. They had also heard the crane cry just now. The 2 of them wanted to know what was going on inside, but they didn't dare to enter rashly. When they heard Yi Yun say, "What a powerful sword chi," the 2 of them felt relieved. They knew that Yi Yun had already finished forging the sword. Yi Kong and Yi Chun were both experts in forging sword. Now that they knew that Yi Yun had finished forging the sword, they couldn't wait to open the tent's curtain. They wanted to see the divine weapon that had just come out of the furnace. Who would have thought that when the 2 of them opened the tent's curtain, a dazzling green light would burst out from inside. Boom! The green light was so dazzling that the 2 of them couldn't see anything in front of them. Boom! The huge Mongolian tent could no longer withstand this dense and tyrannical sword energy and instantly exploded. Green light filled the air, and waves of chi dispersed in all directions. The Mongolian tent made of thick sheepskin was instantly reduced to countless pieces of sheepskin that rained down from the sky. When Yi Chun and Yi Kong saw what was in front of them, they were immediately dumbfounded. The floor was littered with pieces of sheepskin, and the luxurious tent had disappeared. Only Yi Yun, whose face was full of exhaustion and excitement, was standing beside the coiling dragon true fire furnace. In Yi Yun's hand, there was a sword that shone brightly and flowed with green light. "Father! Master!" The 2 of them immediately rushed to Yi Yun's side. They were worried about Yi Yun's safety. Yi Yun did not reply. Instead, his eyes lit up as he looked at the sword in his hand with excitement. "Good sword!" Yi Yun blurted out, "It's really a good sword." When Yi Kong and Yi Chun saw that Yi Yun was fine, they immediately relaxed and stopped to look at the sword in Yi Yun's hand. With one look, the 2 of them exclaimed in unison, "It's really a good sword." The sword in Yi Yun's hand was 1 meter long and 3 inches long. It shone with green light and was surrounded by auspicious chi. On the sword hilt, there was a lifelike red-crowned crane standing proudly. On the sword's body, light flowed continuously, to the point that it was impossible to look directly at it. Father, this crane. Yi Kong looked at the sword in Yi Yun's hand and asked. He had clearly heard the cry of the crane just now. Even if there was a red-crowned crane on the sword hilt, it couldn't possibly make the cry of a real crane. Could it be that he was hallucinating? That's right, Master. Yi Chen also asked, what was the cry of the crane just now? I'm not sure about this either. Yi Yun looked at the sword in his hand that was emitting green light and shook his head. What? Master, you're not sure? When Yi Chen and Yi Kong heard Yi Yun's words, they looked at each other in confusion. What's going on? Yi Yun took out a piece of yellow cloth from his chest and wrapped it around the sword in his hand. He then told the two of them about the red-crowned crane's appearance. Every time Yi Yun forged a sword, he would prepare a piece of yellow cloth like this. This was because the scabbard could only be forged after the sword's body was forged. Before the scabbard was completed, he would use a piece of yellow cloth to replace it. There's such a thing? Yi Chen was shocked when he heard Yi Yun's words. It seems that Father's sword forging skills have improved by another level. Yi Kong said. This matter definitely has nothing to do with my sword forging skills. Yi Yun shook his head. Nothing to do with it? Yi Kong asked in return. Yi Yun nodded his head. Master, don't think too much about it. This is a good omen. You should be happy. Yi Chen was proficient in the yin-yang secret arts, so he advised Yi Yun. Yes. Yi Yun responded and then put the sword wrapped in yellow cloth on his back. Ding-ling-ling. The Luan bell rang. Barter brought several dozen elite cavalrymen and rushed over from not far away. The loud sound just now had awakened him from his sleep. He thought that the enemy had come to attack, so he quickly packed up and left the tent. After discovering that Yi Chen's tent was empty, Barter cursed in his heart. He thought that the great Ming dynasty had sent people to capture the Yi family. Thus, he brought several hundred of his personal guards and over 1,000 archers and rushed over to Yi Yun's tent. Because Yi Yun and Yi Kong liked peace and quiet and their cultivations were high, Barter specially arranged for them to stay in this quiet place. The remaining Yi family members were scattered in different parts of Mongolia, living together with the Mongolians and Han people. Yi Chen, Anda, old hero, what's going on? Barter looked at the Mongolian tent that had been turned into tattered sheepskin and asked nervously as he walked over to the three of them. Behind him, several dozen elite cavalrymen quickly protected the four of them, forming an inner circle. Each of them was on high alert with curved swords in their hands as they stared at their surroundings. The outer circle was made up of over 1,000 archers. They pulled their bows and aimed in all directions, ready to release a rain of arrows at any time. Look at how nervous you are, Brother Barter. Yi Chen saw that Barter was like he was facing a great enemy, so he immediately walked forward and said, Our family head was forging a sword and accidentally destroyed the tent. Forging a sword? The tent was destroyed? Barter looked at the tattered sheepskin under his feet and the strange furnace beside Yi Yun. He looked at Yi Chen with a puzzled expression. He didn't understand how forging a sword was related to the tent being destroyed. Greetings, Duke. Yi Yun walked forward and cupped his hands. Yi Yun is incompetent and accidentally destroyed the tent. Duke, please forgive me. Yi Kong followed behind Yi Yun and also bowed towards Barter. Due to the language barrier, Barter didn't understand Yi Yun's words. Yi Chen quickly translated Yi Yun's words for him. Old hero, what are you talking about? After Barter heard Yi Chen's translation, he immediately bowed towards Yi Yun. It's just a big tent, it's not worth mentioning. This little prince is worried that someone is plotting to harm you, so I brought troops to help. I hope that old hero won't be offended by my rash actions. Yi Chen continued to translate. Yi Yun was in fear and trepidation. He destroyed the tent and the other party brought troops to help. Now he said that he was rash. This Duke Barter was simply too polite. Yi Yun still wanted to explain, but he was stopped by Yi Chen. Head, if you continue to explain like this, You won't be able to explain everything until dawn. How about this? I'll explain it to him. It's getting late. You can sleep with Big Brother tonight. Okay. Yi Yun nodded. Yi Chen turned around and hugged the confused Barter's shoulder. He mumbled in Mongolian as he left. During the process of leaving, Barter first exclaimed in surprise, then immediately turned around and cast a look of admiration at Yi Yun. Yi Chen, on the other hand, immediately turned Barter's head and continued to gesticulate. Crash! Dozens of guards and thousands of archers put their scimitars back into their sheaths and pulled back their longbows. They lined up neatly in a square formation and followed behind Barter and Yi Chen. I think this Yi Chen is really going to become a Mongolian. Yi Kong looked at Yi Chen, who was wearing a Mongolian robe and boot. He was hugging Barter and gradually walking away. You don't say. I'm really starting to like this place. Yi Yun looked at Barter, who was laughing and playing with Yi Chen in the distance, and smiled as he walked towards Yi Kong's tent. Yi Kong smiled and shook his head. He turned around and followed Yi Yun to his tent. At this moment, in a side room of the Purple Sun Temple, the little Taoist boy who was wearing pajamas placed the copper basin in his hands to the side and climbed onto the bed in satisfaction. Inside the copper basin, there was a piece of burnt black paper in the shape of a red-crowned crane lying inside. Time to sleep, the little Taoist boy said as he blew out the candle on the table and covered himself with the blanket with a smile. Inside the Pear Blossom Palace. Night. Xiao Zhao's room was brightly lit. She sat in front of the table with her hands supporting her chin. She stared at the stack of banknotes on the table in a daze. This stack of banknotes was given to her by Yi Fan when she left the Lingyun cave. It was a total of 26,000 taels. Xiao Zhao couldn't bear to spend it even once. She had always kept it in her arms. When she was free, she would place the banknotes one by one on the table and look at them foolishly. She looked at them while giggling. To others, this was a huge amount of wealth that they could only dream of. 26,000 taels of silver was enough for them to live a lifetime without having to worry about food and clothing. However, in Xiao Zhao's eyes, this was not money. It was Yi Fan's concern for her. Brother Yi, are you doing well? Xiao Zhao rubbed the banknotes in her hands and said to herself. Not good. She imitated Yi Fan's tone and said, Not good at all. How is it not good? Xiao Zhao said with a smile. You damned girl, you didn't even come back to see me. She continued to imitate Yi Fan's tone. Ha ha. Xiao Zhao laughed. When I have time, I'll come back to see you and sister-in-law Chico. That's more like it. She imitated Yi Fan's rough voice. Sigh. Thinking about how Fujiwara no Chico had already recovered her memories, Xiao Zhao stopped smiling and became sad. Right now, Yi Fan and Fujiwara no Chico must be stuck in the Lingyun cave all day long, wrapped up in love. Thinking about the first time she saw Yi Fan in the Lingyun cave, Xiao Zhao's heart melted again. When she saw the crescent moon mark on Yi Fan's back, she was even happier than when she was in human form. 300 years. She had waited for him in the Lingyun cave for 300 years. In this world, perhaps only she knew what it felt like to wait for someone for 300 years. Unfortunately, the 300 years she had waited for Fujiwara no Chico for 30 days. Thinking of this, Xiao Zhao's eyes turned red. Chapter 242. Will it? Xiao Zhao tilted her head and muttered to herself. Won't it? This question would never have an answer, but it was also a magic weapon that Xiao Zhao used to comfort herself. Should it? Xiao Zhao said as she picked up a banknote on the table and looked at it. Should marry me, hee. Xiao Zhao laughed with tears in her eyes. What? You also want to be poisoned by the yin-yang goo? With a creak, the door opened. Jinchan pushed the door open and walked in with a pot of wine in her hand. Master. Xiao Zhao saw Jinchan come in and immediately stood up. Jinchan's face was red and she reeked of alcohol. Master, you drank? Xiao Zhao walked over and closed the door. Then she picked up the teapot on the table and poured tea for Jinchan. This was the first time she saw Jinchan drinking alone. Pa! Jinchan walked to the table and put the pot of wine in her hand on the table. Master can't sleep today. Accompany Master to drink a few cups, and Jinchan, who reeked of alcohol, saw the stack of banknotes on the table. Why are there so many banknotes? Where did they come from? Brother Yi originally gave them to me, Xiao Zhao said as she handed the fragrant tea to Jinchan. Master, have some tea. Why drink tea? Jinchan took the tea from Xiao Zhao and put it aside. Come, let's drink this today, Jinchan said as she shook the pot of wine in her hand at Xiao Zhao. Master. Xiao Zhao saw that Jinchan was different today and quickly asked, Why did you suddenly drink wine? Usually, if it wasn't an important occasion, Jinchan wouldn't touch a drop of wine. What happened today? Why can't Master drink? Jinchan narrowed her eyes and smiled. She picked up an empty teacup from the table and poured wine directly into it. Come, drink with your master. Today, let's get drunk and get rid of our worries, Jinchan said as she pushed a full glass of wine in front of Xiao Zhao. Master, what happened to you today? Xiao Zhao found that Jinchan's eyes were a little red. She seemed to have just cried, so she quickly asked, Is there something on your mind? Gulp, gulp. Jinchan did not answer. Instead, she picked up the wine pot and started drinking. Master, don't drink any more. When Xiao Zhao saw Jinchan gulping down the wine, she quickly got up and took the wine pot from Jinchan's hand. You'll hurt yourself if you keep drinking like this. Injured? Jinchan smiled drunkenly. It's better to hurt yourself than to be sad. After saying that, she directly picked up the wine cup on the table and drank it again. Master! Before Xiao Zhao could react, Jinchan's wine cup was already empty. Why aren't you drinking? After Jinchan finished drinking, she asked Xiao Zhao. Xiao Zhao looked at Jinchan with a distressed expression, not knowing what to say. Are you drinking? Jinchan asked Xiao Zhao. If you're not drinking, give me the wine. As she said that, she reached out to grab the wine pot in Xiao Zhao's hand. I'll drink. When Xiao Zhao saw Jinchan trying to grab the wine, she quickly blocked Jinchan with her arm. I'll drink, okay? Xiao Zhao felt distressed for her master. If she let her continue drinking like this, she was afraid her master's body wouldn't be able to withstand it. Gudong. Xiao Zhao looked at the wine pot in her hand, and after hesitating for a moment, she took a big gulp. This wine was brewed by Mu Sun and Shui Ling using the pear blossoms of a 100-year-old pear tree. It was called pear blossom wine and was mellow and fragrant. This wine was generally only taken out during festivals or when the senior brother and junior sister were reunited. Normally, they would not drink it. Golden Silkworm smiled when she saw Xiao Zhao drinking. She chuckled and took out another wine pot from her bosom. Master, why do you still have wine? Xiao Zhao said as she tried to grab Jinchan's wine again. This time, Jinchan learned her lesson and dodged, causing Xiao Zhao to miss. You already have wine in your hand, why are you trying to grab Master's? Jinchan smiled. You'll get drunk, Xiao Zhao quickly said. If I could get drunk, I wouldn't come here, Jinchan said. You sit there and accompany Master. Xiao Zhao had no choice but to sit down opposite Jinchan. I ask you. Jinchan looked at Xiao Zhao with a pair of drunken eyes. Do you miss him again? Who? Xiao Zhao was suddenly asked by Jinchan and was somewhat at a loss. Still pretending, Jinchan uncorked the wine and took a big gulp. Besides that smelly brat, who else could it be? No. Xiao Zhao blushed and lowered her head. Just now, I heard you talking about Brother Yi left and Brother Yi right. Jinchan looked at Xiao Zhao opposite her and said with a smile. He also talked about marrying you. Master. Xiao Zhao looked up shyly. Ha! Jinchan laughed. That day when I went to the Lingyun cave with that smelly brat to save Chico, I could tell that you were deeply in love with him. Xiao Zhao lowered her head, her face red to the base of her neck. She fiddled with the corners of her clothes and did not say a word. Sigh. Jin Chan sighed deeply. The two of you are quite compatible, but unfortunately, you are not fated to be together. Jin Chan said and started drinking again. Xiao Zhao's eyes reddened when she heard Jin Chan's words. She pursed her lips, then picked up the jug of wine on the table and took a big gulp. What an infatuated, silly girl! Jin Chan looked at Xiao Zhao and said with a sigh. Master, is it because I'm not good so he doesn't like me? Xiao Zhao said, tears glistening in her eyes. Silly girl, Jin Chan said with a smile, if you're not good, there won't be any good girls in the world. Xiao Zhao was silent and took another sip of wine. It's impossible between you and that brat in this lifetime. Jin Chan looked at Xiao Zhao and said, you can't be his concubine. Even if I were to be his concubine, I wouldn't have that kind of fortune. Xiao Zhao said faintly. There are many good men in the world, why do you have to be so stubborn about him? Jin Chan persuaded Xiao Zhao, your martial uncle Mu Sen's disciple Mu Lin, martial uncle Huiyan's disciple Hui Qi, and martial uncle Tu Kuan's disciple Tu Chun all have dignified appearances and bouffant looks. When the three of them first saw you, their gazes, hee. Jin Chan said and drank again. They're all good, but unfortunately, they're not Brother Yi. Xiao Zhao said softly. Sigh, I don't think you want to be poisoned by the yin yang gu. Jin Chan sighed deeply. It's more like you want to be poisoned by the love gu. Xiao Zhao smiled bitterly. Silly disciple. Jin Chan shook her head helplessly. Master, don't just talk about me. Xiao Zhao changed the topic and asked Jin Chan, are you also thinking about another person like me? Jin Chan smiled and did not comment. I wonder how Uncle Yi and the others are doing now. Xiao Zhao said. Jin Chan's expression was solemn and she took a big gulp of wine. When she thought of the words Yi Yun said to her before he left, her heart was torn again. At that time, Yi Yun told her that he might not come back alive after going to Tubo. This sentence was like a knife that stabbed deeply into her heart. Ever since Yi Yun left, she had no appetite for food and drink. At night, she tossed and turned, unable to fall asleep. Every time she closed her eyes, the scene of Yi Yun covered in blood would appear in front of her eyes. Now Mu Sun had returned to his wood fragrance pavilion, Shui Ling had returned to Clear Water Room, Huiyan had returned to Fire Cloud Cave, and Tu Kuan had returned to his thick earth kiln. In this way, only she and Xiao Zhao were left in Pear Blossom Palace. That night, she tossed and turned restlessly. When she finally forced herself to fall asleep, she dreamed of a blood-covered Yi Yun standing in front of her. After waking up, Jin Chan rubbed the silver lock on her neck, and could not help but curl up on the bed and cry. Yi Yun had already left for more than a month. She did not know whether he was alive or dead. She had thought of going to Tubo to find Yi Yun, but Tubo was so big, where could she find him? Speaking of which, if she left, who would guard Pear Blossom Palace? Upset, after crying, she decided not to sleep. She put on her clothes, got up, and went to the winery to get 2 pots of Pear Blossom wine. She was preparing to go to the back garden to drink and relax. Who would have thought that after drinking half of the wine, she would hear Xiao Zhao talking to herself. Xiao Zhao's room was not far from the back garden. In addition, Jin Chan's cultivation was very high, so she could hear Xiao Zhao's voice clearly. Thinking that Xiao Zhao and herself were in the same situation, Jin Chan brought the wine and went to Xiao Zhao's room. With his cultivation, he should be fine, Golden Silkworm said. This sentence was not only for Xiao Zhao to hear, but also for herself to hear. Then, Master, what are you worried about? Xiao Zhao laughed. I didn't think that Master would cry. Who cried? When Jin Chan heard Xiao Zhao's words, she immediately blinked her eyes. Hee. Xiao Zhao covered her mouth and laughed. You don't look like it at all when you pretend. What did I pretend? Jin-chan was so nervous that she could not speak clearly. What a foolish and infatuated master. Xiao Zhao imitated Jin-chan's tone and laughed. Glib tongue. Jin-chan was completely speechless. Although her cultivation was high when it came to glib words, she was really not a match for Xiao Zhao. I learned it from master. Xiao Zhao laughed. Like teacher, like disciple. Damn girl, hee hee hee. Chapter 243. Above the sea, a huge warship moved with the wind, breaking through the waves. Inside the cabin, Long Jijie sat quietly on a futon with his eyes closed. In front of him was a simple wooden table. On the wooden table, a copper incense burner was emitting smoke. Behind him, an exquisite screen with a painting of a lady was placed there. It was antique. Knock, knock, knock. The sound of knocking came from outside the door. Please come in, Long Jijie said with his eyes closed. Swish. The door opened and Yamada Keiko, dressed in red, walked in with a tray. After entering the cabin, Yamada Keiko turned around and closed the door. She took off the clogs on her feet, then bent down and walked to Long Jijie with small step. Sir, your meal is ready, Yamada Keiko said as she placed the dishes on the tray on the table in front of Long Jijie. A plate of sashimi, a bowl of white rice, 2 plates of sushi, a pot of sake, 2 side dishes, and a pair of red bamboo chopsticks. It was simple and sumptuous. Long Jijie opened his eyes and nodded slightly to Yamada Keiko. Thank you for your hard work. Yamada Keiko bowed in return, then took the tray with both hands and stepped back to the cabin door. She turned around and prepared to leave. Miss Keiko, please stay, Long Jijie said. Yamada Keiko turned around and bowed her head. Miss Keiko, have you eaten? Long Jijie asked. I'll go to the kitchen to eat after serving you, Yamada Keiko said with her head down. That's good, Long Jijie said. I can't finish these things, so you can eat with me. Keiko doesn't dare, Yamada Keiko said with her head down again. What do you mean you don't dare? Long Jijie said to her. Remember, here, you are not a servant, understand? Yamada Keiko's face changed and she looked up at Long Jijie. Come here. Long Jijie didn't look at her. Instead, he picked up a piece of sushi with his hand and put it in his mouth while beckoning her over. The action of eating sushi seemed simple, but in fact, it had a deep meaning. He didn't want Yamada Keiko to misunderstand that he was afraid of being poisoned and wanted her to eat with him. Yamada Keiko hesitated for a moment, then came to the wooden table with small steps and knelt down opposite Long Jijie. Here. Long Jijie ate the sushi and handed the red bamboo chopsticks to Yamada Keiko. Yamada Keiko nodded slightly and took the chopsticks with both hands. Here you are. Long Jijie picked up the rice again and handed it to Yamada Keiko. Yamada Keiko pursed her lips and lowered her head to take it. Hurry up and eat, Long Jijie said. If you don't eat, it'll get cold. Yamada Keiko nodded slightly at Long Jijie. She opened her red lips and used her chopsticks to pick up a small ball of white rice and put it into her mouth. Don't just eat. Long Jijie pushed 2 side dishes on the table in front of Yamada Keiko. Eat. Yamada Keiko lowered her head again and put some food into her bowl. Did you make all these dishes? Because there was only 1 pair of chopsticks, Long Jijie picked up a piece of sashimi and put it into his mouth. Yamada Keiko nodded. What good craftsmanship, Long Jijie praised. Yamada Keiko still nodded. Are you afraid of me? Long Jijie saw that Yamada Keiko hadn't been talking, so he asked her. Yamada Keiko shook her head. Then why are you so quiet? Long Jijie poured a glass of sake and then asked. Is it because of Tokugawa Yasu? She told you to be quiet? But as soon as Long Jijie mentioned Tokugawa Yasu, Yamada Keiko immediately put the bowl and chopsticks on the table. Then she stood up and bowed to Long Jijie. Then she turned and quickly walked to the cabin door, opened it, and walked out. This scene made Long Jijie, who was about to drink his sake, Instantly petrified and stunned on the spot, the warship broke through the wind and waves at an extremely fast speed. By the next night, the warship had already sailed hundreds of miles away from Dongying. This warship was Tokugawa Ieyasu's special warship. The hull was vast and extremely sturdy, and the crew members were carefully selected. In order to show his sincerity, Tokugawa Ieyasu gave this warship to Long Jiji. On the deck of the huge warship, Yamada Keiko, who was dressed in red, looked up at the stars in the sky, lost in thought. After a long time, she took out a red bamboo flute from her sleeve and put it to her mouth, concentrating on playing it. The sound of the flute was sorrowful and weeping. In the rumbling sound of the waves, it sounded extremely desolate. Yamada Keiko's red clothes fluttered in the wind. Her long black hair, coupled with her exquisite and impeccable face, made her look like a fairy descending to the mortal world under the quiet and beautiful night. Long Jijie, who was meditating in the cabin, immediately opened his eyes when he heard the sorrowful sound of the flute. He got up and put on his cloak, opened the cabin door, and slowly walked to the deck of the warship. At this time, Yamada Keiko was completely immersed in the sound of her flute. She did not know that Long Jijie was already standing behind her. The song ended. Yamada Keiko's face was full of tears. Pa, pa, pa. Long Jijie, who was standing behind her, clapped his hands. Yamada Keiko's flute sound made him intoxicated. He was completely infected by the sorrowful and grand atmosphere of the flute sound. Yamada Keiko heard the applause behind her and immediately turned around. Seeing that it was Long Jijie, she immediately wiped away the tears on her face. After bowing to Long Jijie, she trotted away from the deck of the warship. Long Jijie was dumbfounded again. What was going on? He began to wonder in his heart. Why did Yamada Keiko run away as soon as she saw him? Did he do something wrong? Long Jijie thought as he came to the bow of the ship. Looking down from here, he could see the waves surging like 1,000 layers of snow. The huge waves were monstrous, like 10,000 horses galloping. Phew! Long Jijie let out a long breath and began to move his hands and feet. After meditating in the cabin for a whole day, he wanted to stretch his muscles and bones. What? Just as he was stretching his muscles and bones, not far from the bow of the ship, a huge black shadow slowly floated up from the bottom of the sea. Suddenly, a large snow-white wave rose on the surface of the sea. Long Jijie frowned and stopped his movements. As the waves rolled and scattered, the huge black shadow gradually emerged from the surface of the sea. A huge sea squid appeared in front of Long Jijie's eyes. This sea squid was extremely huge. Dozens of densely packed tentacles made one's scalp tingle. The thickest part of each tentacle was more than 5 feet thick. A pair of huge eyes was about the size of a millstone, flashing with a cold blue light. This subordinate greets the divine envoy. A low voice came from the sea. This huge sea squid could actually speak human language. What are you doing here? Long Jijie asked impatiently. This subordinate saw that the divine envoy was passing by this sea area, so I came to pay my respects. The low voice came again. Got it. You can leave. Long Jijie waved his hand at the sea squid. Remember, tell the other sea monsters that they don't have to show up to see me again. I have something important to do. Chapter 244. After Long Jijie moved around on the deck for a while, he returned to the cabin. When he opened the cabin door, he found Yamada Keiko kneeling at the door waiting for him. Seeing Long Jijie return, Yamada Keiko immediately kowtowed. Keiko! Long Jijie closed the door and asked, "Why are you here? Why don't you go back and rest?" At this time, Yamada Keiko had changed into a simple and loose white kimono. Coupled with her creamy skin, she looked extremely graceful and luxurious. "I'm here to serve sir in bed." Yamada Keiko, who was kneeling on the floor, straightened up and bowed her head. Serve, serve. Long Jijie seemed to understand Yamada Keiko's meaning. Yes. Yamada Keiko bowed her head and replied. I don't need you to serve me. Long Jijia took off his shoes and walked inside. Go back and rest. Long Jijia began to take off his cloak. Yamada Keiko immediately got up and walked quickly to Long Jijia's side. She took the cloak that Long Jijia took off, folded it carefully, and put it aside. You don't need to be here. Go back and rest. Long Jijia said to her again. I'll serve sir here. Yamada Keiko began to take out the bedding from the closet in the cabin and made the bed for Long Jijia. Long Jijia frowned and silently watched Yamada Keiko neatly spread the bedding on the wooden floor and tidied it up. He finally understood why Yamada Keiko was acting so abnormally today. When Tokugawa Ieyasu asked Yamada Keiko to take care of him in every possible way, the word meticulous was obviously emphasized. Yamada Keiko subconsciously bit her lower lip after hearing Tokugawa Ieyasu's words. Originally, he thought that she was not used to Tokugawa Ieyasu asking her to follow him. Now he understood that the key to the matter was the word meticulous. No wonder she was acting so abnormally today. Hua! While Long Jijia was thinking, Yamada Keiko, who had made the bed, stood up and pulled out the hairpin in her hair. Her long hair, which was like a waterfall, quickly fell down. Dressed in white, with silky long hair, a beautiful face, snow-white skin, and an exquisite figure, Yamada Keiko was beautiful and moving, like a fairy. You? What are you doing? Long Jijia asked involuntarily. Yes, sir. Yamada Keiko put the hairpin aside and was about to untie the butterfly belt on her waist. Wait a minute. Long Jijia stretched out his hand and raised his palm, shouting at Yamada Huizi. Yamada Keiko stopped what she was doing and looked at Long Jijia quietly. I'm going to meditate and practice tonight. I can't sleep, Long Jijia said seriously. You should go back and rest. Since Sir wants to practice, then Keiko will wait by the side. Yamada Keiko said as she slowly walked behind the screen and knelt on the ground. If you're here, how can I train? Long Jijia asked with a frown. Keiko has learned how to hold her breath. She won't make any noise, Yamada Keiko replied from behind the screen. Don't worry, sir. Keiko won't affect your practice. You? What if you peek at me practicing? Long Jijia racked his brains to think of a way. Shwa. Through the figure on the screen, Long Jijia saw Yamada Keiko take out a long cloth and directly cover her eyes. I'll cover my eyes. You can practice as much as you want. Yamada Keiko's voice came from behind the screen. You? Miss Keiko, please respect yourself. Long Jijia was completely out of ideas. He deliberately put on a stern face and ordered her to leave. Please leave. There was silence behind the screen, and then there was a rustling sound. Yamada Keiko slowly walked out from behind the screen with tears on her face. She picked up the hairpin that was placed at the side, then picked up her red kimono that was placed on the floor. She slowly walked in front of Long Jijia and bowed. After I die, please send my ashes back to Japan on account of our relationship as master and servant. Yamada Keiko said and turned to leave. Wait a minute. Long Jijia was confused by Yamada Keiko's words. What was going on? He just asked her to leave his room. How did it involve her ashes? Yamada Keiko stopped and turned around. She lowered her head and didn't speak. What did you mean by what you said just now? I don't understand at all. Long Jijia said as he walked in front of Yamada Keiko. He took out a white handkerchief from his pocket and handed it to Yamada Keiko. Yamada Keiko bent down and took the handkerchief from Long Jijia with both hands. She gently wiped her tears. Sir, you don't have to ask. I just ask you to let me spend the night here every night. This. Long Jijia didn't understand what was going on. Please. Yamada Keiko knelt on the ground with a plop, tears falling down her face. You. Get up first. Long Jijia quickly reached out to help Yamada Keiko up. Yamada Keiko shook her head and didn't get up. Get up first. Long Jijia had no choice but to promise Yamada Keiko. I promise you. Really? Yamada Keiko raised her tearful face and asked. Long Jijia nodded. Get up quickly. Thank you, sir. Yamada Keiko wiped her tears with a handkerchief and got up. Keiko will remember sir's great kindness. I promise you, but you have to tell me what's going on. Long Jijia said. Yamada Keiko didn't speak. She turned slightly and looked at the cabin door behind her. Then she stared at Long Jijia with her beautiful eyes. Was she afraid that someone would eavesdrop? Long Jijia understood. He had seen the sailors on this warship. They looked like sailors, but in fact, they were all first-class jonin. It wasn't that Tokugawa Ieyasu deliberately arranged it, but this ship was Tokugawa Ieyasu's private ship. In order to protect his safety, the crew was naturally all experts, even the sailors were no exception. Let's go inside and talk. Long Jijia motioned to Yamada Keiko. Yamada Keiko was smart. After nodding slightly, she slowly walked into the depths of the cabin. Long Jijia glanced at the heavy cabin door and then turned around. At the same time, he flicked his sleeve. A translucent arc of light was instantly emitted and quietly rushed to the cabin door. Swish! After the translucent arc of light touched the cabin door, it immediately spread out. In the blink of an eye, the cabin door, walls, and floor were completely covered. After a while, everything was restored to normal. Now no one can hear us, Long Jijia said as he came to the wooden table and sat down. He motioned Yamada Keiko, who was standing there, to sit down as well. Yamada Keiko slightly bowed to thank him, then knelt on the opposite side of the wooden table and sat face to face with Long Jijia. She knew Long Jijia's ability. You can speak, Long Jijia said as he took 2 white porcelain cups from the tea tray on the table, then picked up the teapot and poured tea. I don't know where to start. Yamada Keiko looked straight and said to Long Jijia. Then I'll ask you answer. Long Jijia pushed a cup of steaming tea in front of Yamada Keiko. Yamada Keiko nodded slightly and held the white porcelain teacup with both hands. Why does Tokugawa Ieyasu want you to follow me? Long Jijia asked. Is it to let you monitor me? Yamada Keiko shook her head. No. Long Jijia was a little puzzled. Then why? Just to serve me? He is already suspicious of me. Yamada Keiko still looked straight. Suspicious? Long Jijia frowned. Matsumoto Takayoshi's Black Feather Unit. Yamada Keiko looked at Long Jijia with the white porcelain cup in her hand and said, He suspects that I am also one of Matsumoto Takayoshi's people. Long Jijia frowned after hearing this. Although Yamada Keiko was also a Black Feather Ninja, she was not necessarily one of Matsumoto Takayoshi's people. This Tokugawa Ieyasu was really meticulous. He would not allow any details to be wrong. He is a little paranoid. Long Jijia picked up the teacup. He is doing this for a reason, Yamada Keiko continued. Because my brother was also a Black Feather Ninja, and now he is one of Matsumoto Takayoshi's people. Long Jijia lowered his head and gently blew on the hot tea. You have a Black Feather Ninja brother? What is his name? Yamada Shingo, Yamada Keiko said calmly. The teacup in Long Jijia's hand stopped by his mouth. Yamada Shingo is your brother? Long Jijia frowned and looked at Yamada Keiko. Yes. Yamada Keiko nodded. No wonder, no wonder. Long Jijia took a sip of the fragrant tea and said no wonder twice. You also know my brother? Yamada Keiko asked. The legendary Black Feather heroes, Ito Fumio and Yamada Shingo, Long Jijia said as he put the teacup on the table. Who doesn't know their names? I just didn't expect this Yamada Shingo to be your brother, and I didn't expect him to be by Matsumoto Takayoshi's side. My family was poor when I was young. My brother was sent to the ninja training camp by my parents when he was less than 5 years old. It was not for anything else but to save food for one person in the family. Yamada Keiko gently rubbed the white porcelain teacup in her hand and slowly said, 5 years later, I was also sent to the ninja training camp when I was just 8 years old. At that time, my brother was already an excellent jonin. Long Jijia's heart moved. She was only 10 years old, and could become a jonin. She was indeed a genius ninja. In order to become a person like my brother, I practiced ninjutsu day and night. Unfortunately, my aptitude was too poor, Yamada Keiko said calmly. I just became a jonin when I was 18 years old. And my brother was already a black feather ninja when he was 13 years old. It's not that your aptitude is poor, it's that your brother is too extraordinary. Long Jijia said to Yamada Keiko, as far as I know, the average age of a jonin is about 27 or 28 years old. It's very rare for you to become a jonin at the age of 18. Yamada Keiko smiled politely and did not speak. By the way, why do you have to live in my room? Long Jijia changed the topic and asked, when I asked you to leave, why did you mention your ashes? You don't know, sir. Yamada Keiko saw Long Jijia ask about this and told him the reason. It turned out that when Yamada Shingo obtained the Black Feather token and became a Black Feather ninja, Matsumoto Takeyoshi arranged for him to stay by his side and called him sir. Chapter 245. Yamada Keiko lived up to everyone's expectations. She became a jounin at the age of 18 and obtained the Black Feather Order at the age of 20. She became the youngest Black Feather ninja after Yamada Shingo. Tokugawa Ieyasu was overjoyed. He kept her by his side at all times as his personal guard. However, Tokugawa Ieyasu had always been cautious. Although he arranged for Yamada Keiko to be his personal guard, he still had a trick up his sleeve. In the name of taking care of her, he brought Yamada Keiko's parents from the countryside and sent people to take care of them. It was called taking care of them, but it was actually house arrest. Tokugawa Ieyasu had no choice but to do so. In Dongying, there were countless cases of personal guards being bribed. He had a respected status, so naturally, he was even more careful. You mean, if you disobey Tokugawa Ieyasu's orders, your parents will be in danger? Long Jijia asked with a frown. After so many years, I know Tokugawa Ieyasu's character too well, Yamada Keiko said. He doesn't trust me now. If I disobey his orders again, I'm afraid my parents. Long Jijia understood what Yamada Keiko meant. If something happened to her parents because of her, she naturally didn't want to live alone. Will the sailors on this ship report everything about you to Tokugawa Ieyasu regularly? Long Jijia asked. Yamada Keiko nodded. From now on, you will sleep in my room, Long Jijia said to Yamada Keiko. You sleep here, and I will sleep on the other side of the screen. How can that be? Yamada Keiko hurriedly said. Keiko is already very grateful that you allow me to stay here. How can I let you suffer? There is a stove here. You can sleep here. I can sleep on the other side of the screen. You'd better sleep here, Long Jijia said. If you want to do it more realistically and save yourself the trouble. Yamada Keiko blushed and nodded slightly. Great Ming Imperial Palace. At night. In the side hall, more than a dozen middle-aged men in Taoist robes sat on both sides of the square table. The three people in the lead were none other than Zhang Xiaoyang, the head of Mount Longhu's Jingyi School, Yu Xingchen, the head of Chuanjin sect, and Lu Yuanshan, the head of Maoshan. The remaining Taoists were the sect masters of the other branches of Taoism, such as Tranquility sect, Xingyang sect, Chunyang sect, Chongyang sect, and so on. Sitting at the head of the table was none other than State Preceptor Xianji, dressed in a luxurious golden robe. May I know why the Grand Preceptor has summoned us here in the middle of the night? Celestial Master Zhang of Dragon Tiger Mountain was the first to speak. The people who came today had extremely high statuses in Dao sect. Other than the sect master of Purple Sun Monastery, Qingchenzi, almost all the representatives of Dao sect were present. This kind of thing had never happened before. He had a vague feeling that something was going to happen. To be honest with you, Celestial Master, I've invited all of you here today because I was summoned to do so. Xianji bowed to Celestial Master Zhang and said. After all, he was also from Taoism. Although he was now the state preceptor, Celestial Master Zhang's status in Taoism was much higher than his. Summoned. Celestial Master Zhang looked back at Xuanzhan's sex, Zhenren Yu, and Maoshan's sex, Lu Yuanshan. After hearing Xianji's words, the two of them looked at each other in confusion. The rest of the headmasters also began to mutter in their hearts. Usually, when the emperor summoned the representatives of Taoism, he only summoned the Jingyi school, the Xuanzhan sect, and the Maoshan sect. The Taoism sect they belonged to had never been summoned at all. What was going on today? Why did the emperor suddenly summon them? Seeing that everyone was confused, Xianji took out a yellow silk scroll and stood up solemnly. All sect masters, receive the imperial edict. When everyone saw Xianji take out the imperial edict, they did not dare to be negligent. With a crash, they all stood up and knelt on the ground. By the will of the heavens, the emperor decrees. Xianji read the imperial edict aloud. Since I succeeded the throne, I have received the will of the heavens above and followed the will of the people below. Yesterday, the late emperor visited me in a dream and said, with the appearance of the 9 cauldrons, the mountains and rivers will be secure. In order to ensure the stability of the great Ming dynasty's mountains and rivers, I hereby appoint State Preceptor Xianji as an imperial envoy and order all sects to search for the whereabouts of the 9 cauldrons. Long live the emperor! Long live the emperor! The sect masters kowtowed and saluted. Sect masters, please rise, Xianji said as he handed the imperial edict to Zhang Tianshi. Zhang Tianshi raised his hands above his head and respectfully received the imperial edict, then stood up. Everyone stood up and returned to their seat. They did not say a word and frowned. What was wrong with the emperor? Why was he looking for the 9 cauldrons all of a sudden? Just because of a dream? One had to know that the 9 cauldrons had disappeared after the decline of the Zhou dynasty. Emperor Qin Shi Huang, Empress Wu Zetian, and the other emperors had sent people to search for the 9 cauldrons, but all of them returned empty-handed. The emperors of the previous dynasties had mobilized the country's resources but could not find them. How could a few sects find them? What kind of joke was this? Everyone complained incessantly in their hearts, especially those sect masters who were summoned by the emperor for the first time. They felt even more miserable. They had planned to benefit from the glory of Jingyi, Xuanzhan, and Mao Mountain. Now, not only did they not benefit, but they had also fallen into a trap. Zhang Tianshi did not say a word. He slowly put the imperial edict in his hand into his sleeve. Sect Master Yu of the Xuanzhan sect looked solemn and did not say a word. Lu Yuanshan of Mao Mountain looked calm and deep in thought. I've invited all of you here to discuss the search for the 9 cauldrons. Seeing that everyone was silent, Profound Secrets broke the silence first. Brother Xuanji, Taoist Yu of the Xuanzhan sect said, you are also a member of the Taoist sect. You should know about the 9 cauldrons. Even the Qin Emperor, Emperor Wu of Han, and the Tang sect's founder Song couldn't find it. How could we, the Taoist sect, find this divine artifact? Yes. That's right. How can we find them? Everyone began to whisper to each other. I understand what perfected you means. Profound Secrets nodded. The 9 cauldrons are ancient divine objects. It's not easy to find them. However, the Emperor's imperial edict has been issued. We can only act as soon as the edict is received. Otherwise, we'll be disobeying the edict. Everyone fell silent again and shook their heads. If they did not handle this well, not only would they be removed from their position as sect master, they might even lose their lives. Brother Profound Secrets, do you have any good ideas? Lu Yuanshan, who had been silent all this time, looked up at Profound Secrets and asked. This humble Taoist has little talent and knowledge. How could I have any good ideas? Profound Secrets changed the topic. However, I do have an idea. I just don't know if it'll work. Everyone looked up at Profound Secrets' words. They didn't know how Xuanji would be able to find the legendary divine artifact. Oh, Lu Yuanshan asked. What idea do you have? Let's hear it. The Thousand Ghosts Formation. Profound Secrets spat out 4 words. As soon as these 4 words were spoken, the expressions of everyone present changed greatly. Even the leader of the 3 great sects, Zhang Tianshi, could not help but feel shocked. Chapter 246. This forbidden technique was originally used by the Taoist sects to gather a large number of wandering souls for the netherworld when plagues were rampant. Not only was it extremely taxing on one's primordial spirit, the process was also extremely complicated. It required 10 highly skilled Taoist cultivators to set up the innate 8 trigrams formation, then 2 top-notch cultivators in the eye of the 8 trigrams formation would activate the formation, gathering the strength of 10 people to achieve the effect of controlling 10,000 ghosts. Among the 10 people in the formation, the most crucial were the 2 cultivators in the eye of the 8 trigrams formation. The 2 of them each guarded the eye of yin and yang. They were the most crucial of all. If there was even the slightest mistake, the ghosts would go out of control. These ghosts were already filled with resentment, and with the addition of being controlled by the innate 8 trigrams formation, their resentment would increase. Once the spell's confinement was lost, the ghosts would riot, and when that happened, the land would be filled with corpses. The Thousand Ghost Formation? Chuanjin sect leader Perfected You frowned and asked, Brother, you mean? It's very simple. Xian Ji smiled and said, use the ghosts to find the cauldrons. Use the ghosts to find the cauldrons? Perfected You seemed to understand Xian Ji's meaning. Everyone here is a Taoist cultivator, Xian Ji explained, with everyone's strength. Setting up the innate 8 trigrams formation is not difficult. As long as the formation is activated, the ghosts will search every inch of land, and you will definitely find the 9 cauldrons. As soon as he said this, everyone present exclaimed in their hearts, what a vicious method! Driving the ghosts to find the cauldrons was easy to say, but the actual operation was as difficult as ascending to the heavens. After all, the Thousand Ghost Formation was originally used to gather wandering souls and wild ghosts for the netherworld to deal with. However, Xian Ji's idea was the exact opposite. His idea was to release the ghosts. One could imagine the scene. Thousands of resentful wandering souls majestically passing through the streets and alleys, entering and exiting the houses, floating everywhere in search of something. Not to mention the common folk, even Taoist cultivators like them felt their scalps go numb just thinking about it. What do you all think? Xian Ji saw that everyone was silent, so he asked. Everyone looked at each other, but no one answered. This method is not impossible. Lu Yuanshan broke the silence. However, the Thousand Ghost Formation can only search a radius of 800 miles around the innate 8 trigrams formation. Once this range is exceeded, the ghosts may escape the control of the formation. Brother Lu can rest assured, Xian Ji said to Lu Yuanshan with a smile. We are not in a hurry, we can take our time and search area by area. In time, we will definitely find it. Then we will do as you say, Lu Yuanshan said. It is our duty to serve the imperial court. Ha ha ha, Adept Lu is indeed a straightforward person, Profound Secrets laughed. I say, Master Lu, Zhang Tianshi coldly glanced at Lu Yuanshan and said, you better think carefully. Using the innate 8 trigrams formation to gather the ghosts is already extremely dangerous. If you do the opposite and cause the ghosts to scatter in all directions, I don't think I need to explain how dangerous it is. Not to mention anything else, what if the ghosts disturb the people? Who's going to take responsibility for this? Zhang Tianshi said as he turned to look at Profound Secrets. Profound Secrets looked embarrassed, not knowing what to say. After hearing Zhang Tianshi's words, Lu Yuanshan's face darkened. Master Zhang, as we all know, ghosts are yin and yang. How can ordinary people see them? Besides, the ghosts are only looking for the cauldron, how can they disturb the people? Ha ha ha! Zhang Tianshi first looked up to the sky and laughed, then shouted angrily, "What a good yin and yang distinction!" Everyone was shocked by Zhang Tianshi's bell-like voice and couldn't help but tremble. Driving the yin ghosts and entering the yang residence, is this the yin and yang distinction? Zhang Tianshi asked. There is no lack of resentful spirits and malicious spirits among the ghosts. Master Lu, can you guarantee that they won't take this opportunity to cause chaos and harm the people? These evil spirits are full of yin energy and resentment, many can even appear in the daytime, what more at night? Not to mention these resentful spirits and malicious spirits, even ordinary wandering souls will scare the children whose eyes have not yet closed. After hearing Zhang Tianshi's words, everyone began to whisper to each other again. Chuanzhen Sek's enlightened master Yu stroked his long beard and nodded repeatedly. That's only secondary, Zhang Tianshi said as he turned to look at Xuanji. The 1,000 ghost array is full of resentment and yin qi. It passes through houses, alleys, and houses. Even if the people are sleeping soundly, their yang souls will be washed away by the yin qi. Once their yang souls are washed away by the yin qi, they will at least fall seriously ill. And that's only for those who are strong and full of yang qi. Those who are weak will fall ill forever. As for those who are already seriously ill, their souls will be taken away from their bodies by the yin qi of the 1,000 ghost array, and they will die. At that time, even if the 9 cauldrons are found, more than half of the people will be dead. Who will bear the responsibility? Zhang Tianshi turned to look at Lu Yuanshan. You? Is this the yin and yang distinction you were talking about? I think it's yin and yang chaos. Pa. The furious celestial master Zhang slammed his palm heavily on the square table as he spoke. A 2-inch deep palm print was impressively left on it. Zhang Tianshi's words were reasonable, and every word hit the nail on the head. All the sect masters present nodded in agreement. Lu Yuanshan's face turned green and white, and his eyes were burning with anger. He glared at Zhang Tianshi and clenched his fists so tightly that his knuckles cracked. What? Am I wrong? Or does enlightened Master Lu want to teach me a thing or two? Zhang Tianshi saw Lu Yuanshan's anger and clenched fists and narrowed his eyes. Qi. Lu Yuanshan, who was sitting on the chair, let out a burst of green smoke from his right fist. Soul-shattering palm? Zhang Tianshi sneered. Come, I want to see what realm your palm technique has reached. Do you have the elegance of enlightened Master Lu of the past? After saying that, Zhang Tianshi flipped his palm and a golden talisman appeared on his palm. Golden light flashed, overflowing with brilliant colors. It was the famous consummate skill of the celestial master residence, scorching yang palm. 2 spiritual masters, please calm down. If you have anything to say, let's talk it out. Don't hurt the harmony between us. An old Taoist in an apricot robe saw that the 2 of them were at loggerheads and quickly stood up to mediate the situation. That's right, calm down. We're all Taoists, there's no need to be so angry. Everyone stood up and tried to persuade them. They couldn't afford to offend either of them, so they could only try to persuade them. Enlightened masters, please don't be angry. Aren't we still discussing? Xuanji saw that the 2 were at loggerheads and immediately stood up to mediate. Lu Yuanshan saw that Xuanji was trying to mediate, so he suppressed the anger in his chest and loosened his clenched fists. Zhang Tianshi saw that Lu Yuanshan had loosened his grip and also withdrew the golden talisman in his palm. Why don't we do this for now? Profound Secrets said after a moment of thought. Let's stop here for today. Everyone, return to your respective residences and discuss if there is a more suitable method. If there is, that would be best. If there isn't, we can only use the myriad ghost array. At worst, I will plead with His Majesty to issue another decree. When the time comes, when everyone activates the myriad ghost array to search for the cauldron, move the civilians out of the area ahead of time. The cost of moving in and out will be specially allocated by the Ministry of Revenue. We must not let the people suffer any losses. What do you all think? The sect masters nodded. If they really followed Xuanji's plan, it was not impossible. Chapter 247. The Chuanjian sect's Taoist Yu was a calm person who never showed his emotions on his face. When Master Zhang and Lu Yuji were about to fight, he didn't even try to stop them. After bowing to profound secrets, he turned and left. The other sect masters also stood up and bid farewell to profound secrets, then left. Only Lu Yuanshan remained seated in his armchair, not moving at all. He had no intention of leaving. Xuanji understood tacitly. He got up and walked towards an inner chamber beside the side hall. Lu Yuanshan stood up and followed Xuanji into the inner room. This room was where the ministers would rest before morning court. It wasn't big, but it was filled with fruits and refreshments. The interior design was also very elegant. Why did the Lord act so quickly? Lu Yuanshan asked profound secrets as he closed the door behind them. Yesterday the Lord ordered us to use the imperial court's power to search for the 9 cauldrons, said profound secrets, who was sitting in front of a table filled with tea and pastries. Why the rush? Lu Yuanshan asked as he sat across from profound secrets. He picked up a piece of osmanthus cake from the porcelain plate on the table and popped it into his mouth. I'm not sure about that. Profound secrets plucked a grape from the plate on the table and popped it into his mouth. We just have to do as we're told. You saw it just now. This isn't going to be easy. Lu Yuanshan, who was chewing on an osmanthus cake, said as he took out a porcelain cup from the tea tray. Then, he lifted the teapot and began to pour tea. You mean that Zhang guy? Profound Secrets picked up a handful of sunflower seeds and placed them in his hand. Who else could it be? Lu Yuanshan took a sip of tea. A piece of stinky meat makes the pot smell. If he doesn't agree, the rest of the old bastards won't agree so easily either. Then what do you think we should do? Profound Secrets began munching on sunflower seed. Kill him. Lu Yuanshan put down his teacup and said coldly, Kill the chicken to warn the monkeys. Kill him? No way. Profound Secrets spat out a sunflower seed. There are many experts in Mount Longhu. If you kill him, the Taoist residents will come after you. Humph. Lu Yuanshan snorted. Do you think I'm afraid of them? I say, brother, when will you change that temper of yours? Xianji said as he leaned back comfortably in his chair and placed his feet on the table. All you know is fighting and killing. If we don't kill him now, he will be a disaster in the future. Lu Yuanshan picked up another piece of osmanthus cake and put it into his mouth. He was very similar to Lu Ji in this aspect. Lu Ji liked to eat osmanthus cake very much. He would have it in every meal. The righteous celestial master abode is the leader of the Tao sections. Their strength is not to be underestimated, Xianji said while munching on sunflower seeds. Not to mention whether you can kill him or not. Even if you can, what can you do? The people from the celestial master's abode will definitely find out the truth, and then they'll come to Mao Mountain to settle the score with you. Brother, you have a high cultivation base, but as the saying goes, even a good tiger can't withstand a pack of wolves. That day, Master had many experts and tens of thousands of disciples. If he really wanted to avenge Master, do you think the few hundred disciples of Mao Mountain could withstand him? Brother, you're really confused, Lu Yuanshan said with a smile. Once that Zhang guy dies, do you think they'll still be a piece of iron? They'll probably fight until their heads bleed in the fight for the position of sect leader. Sigh, what should I say to you? Xianji shook his head and sighed. You're right. Once that Zhang guy dies, there will be chaos in the sect. Those who want to be the new sect leader will fight both openly and covertly. They might even come to blows. But brother, although you've made a good plan, you've forgotten one thing. What is it? Lu Yuanshan smiled. No matter who the new celestial master is, the first thing they have to do is to avenge the sect leader. Xianji stared at Lu Yuanshan and said coldly. Lu Yuanshan's smile froze. What do you think, brother Lu? Xianji looked at the frozen Lu Yuanshan and smiled. Do you still want to kill him? Then what do you suggest? Lu Yuanshan looked up and asked Xianji. It's very simple. Just like you said, kill the chicken to warn the monkey. Xianji said as he threw the remaining sunflower seeds in his hand into the bowl on the table. He then clapped his hands and picked up the teapot to pour tea. Kill the chicken to warn the monkey? Lu Yuanshan was confused. Kill who? Apart from that Zhang guy and that Yu guy, we'll kill whoever we want. Xianji looked at Lu Yuanshan as he sipped his tea. You mean? Lu Yuanshan seemed to understand Xianji's intention. The rest of the old farts will definitely follow that Zhang guy. Xianji put down his cup and pulled off a banana. He peeled it and smiled as he said, We'll kill whoever follows him. Haha, you're really something, brother. Lu Yuanshan smiled and picked up his teacup. Haha, of course. Xianji smiled slyly. About 100 feet outside the door, an old eunuch in green stood next to a pillar. He was holding a horsetail whisk, and he frowned. Outside the palace. A solemn celestial master Zhang strolled through the quiet streets in the dead of night. He had a habit. Whenever he was done venting his anger, he would find a quiet place to take a walk. He would breathe in some fresh air, adjust his emotions, and calm his heart. It was already late at night, and there was not a single person on the street. It was the perfect time for a walk. Looking at the picturesque rows of shops and residences on both sides of the street, Celestial Master Zhang shook his head. If he really had to activate the 1,000 ghost formation to search for the cauldron, he was afraid that the place would be littered with corpses and people would be plunged into misery and suffering. Because of a ridiculous dream, this ridiculous emperor had done such a ridiculous thing. Instead of thinking about how to benefit the people, he spent all his time talking to Grand Preceptor Xianji about alchemy to seek immortality. What was the use of an emperor like this? Sigh. What a sin. Celestial Master Zhang shook his head with a bitter smile. His chest was so heavy that he could not help but recite a famous poem by the Yuan dynasty poet Zhang Yonghao. The peaks gather like a gathering, the waves are angry, the mountains and rivers on the road of Tongguan. Gazing at the western capital, I hesitate, I grieve, where the Qin and Han dynasties pass, the palaces all become dirt. Prosper, the people suffer. Perish, the people suffer. Brother Xiaoyang. Celestial Master Zhang was just about to express his feelings when a clear voice came from behind him. Celestial Master Zhang turned around. A Taoist in a green Taoist robe floated down from the sky and landed in front of him. Brother Xingqian? What are you doing here? Celestial Master Zhang asked. The person who had come was none other than the Chuanjian sect's sect master, Yu Xingqian. I'm just like you, Brother Xiaoyang. I'm feeling frustrated, so I came out for a walk. Yu Xingqian smiled. I heard you reciting a poem from afar, so I came to join in the fun. Reciting a poem? Humph. Zhang Xiaoyang shook his head and smiled bitterly. I want to King dismember a corpse right now. Brother Xiaoyang's temper is still so fiery. Yu Xingqian smiled. If it weren't for everyone's persuasion, you and Lu Yuanshan would have attacked. Chapter 248. Hey, don't scold me. Yu Xingqian pointed at Zhang Xiaoyang. I didn't stop you. Zhang Xiaoyang was stunned. He then remembered that when he and Lu Yuanshan were at daggers drawn, Yu Xingqian did not stop him. You remember now? Yu Xingqian smiled. Brother Xingqian, how can you still smile at a time like this? Zhang Xiaoyang was really impressed by his best friend. No matter what happened, he was always calm and unhurried. If I don't smile, am I supposed to cry? Yu Xingchen laughed. If crying works, why do we still have morning and evening classes? We can just get our disciples and grand-disciples to cry. I really have to hand it to you. The house is on fire, and you're still smiling. Zhang Xiaoyang mocked Yu Xingchen. As expected of the Chuanjin sect. Calm and indifferent. Even if Mount Tai collapses in front of you, your expression will not change. Of course. Yu Xingchen stroked his beard and said deliberately. Be careful. Don't get blown away by Mount Tai, Zhang Xiaoyang said impatiently. Nothing good comes out of your filthy mouth. Yu Xingchen laughed. You're so angry. Even if Mount Tai is blown away, it'll be because of you. The two of them usually bickered with each other and did not give in to each other. I don't have time to bicker with you. Go ahead and stroll. I'm leaving. Zhang Xiaoyang said as he cast a spell. His feet left the ground and he prepared to leave. Hey, hey, hey! Yu Xingchen grabbed Zhang Xiaoyang's arm and forcefully dragged him back to the ground. Zhang Xiaoyang was already a foot above the ground. Why did you pull me back? Zhang Xiaoyang asked Yu Xingchen angrily as he was pulled back to the ground. Are you a King Rabbit? Why are you running so fast? Yu Xingchen was so anxious that he cursed. Hey, hey, hey! Zhang Xiaoyang heard Yu Xingchen curse and a smirk appeared on his face. He pointed at Yu Xingchen and said, You cursed! Slap! Yu Xingchen immediately let go of Zhang Xiaoyang's arm and covered his mouth with his hand. You lost. You lost. Zhang Xiaoyang smiled proudly. You. Just leave. Yu Xingchen said as he turned around and prepared to flee. Where are you going, great sect leader you? Just as Yu Xingchen turned around, Zhang Xiaoyang pressed down on Yu Xingchen's shoulder. Where are you going? My hands are really cheap. Why do you think I pulled you? Yu Xingchen turned around and said with a face full of annoyance, I just let you run away. He had once boasted in front of Zhang Xiaoyang that he would never swear. Zhang Xiaoyang didn't back down and said that he had never been drunk. The two of them made a bet. If Yu Xingchen were to swear, he would have to treat Zhang Xiaoyang to a drink. If Zhang Xiaoyang were to get drunk, he would have to show Yu Xingchen the monkey fist. This time, in a moment of carelessness, Yu Xingchen blurted out the word Motherf ****. Hee, what's the matter? Head sect leader you, are you going back on your word? Zhang Xiaoyang crossed his arms and asked Yu Xingchen with a mischievous smile. Okay. I admit defeat. Tell me, where do you want to drink? Yu Xingchen said with a bitter face. It wasn't a big deal to treat someone to a drink, but that was for ordinary people. One had to know that the Taoist priests of the Chuanjin sect were different from the Taoist priests of the Jingyi sect. The Chuanjin sect abstained from alcohol and meat and couldn't get married. The Jingyi sect, on the other hand, was relatively relaxed. Not only could they get married, but they could also drink and eat meat except during rituals. There were only a few animals that couldn't be eaten, which were wild geese, cows, turtles, and dogs. As the head of the Chuanjin sect, Yu Xingchen had to treat others to a drink even though he had abstained from alcohol. If it were anyone else, they wouldn't feel good. I think it's simple. Treat me to a meal at the Drunken Immortal restaurant on Mount Longhu. Zhang Xiaoyang smiled wickedly and put his arm around Yu Xingchen's shoulder. Drunken Immortal restaurant? Yu Xingchen was tongue-tied after hearing Zhang Xiaoyang's words. He broke free from Zhang Xiaoyang and said, Are you robbing me? The Drunken Immortal restaurant was famous for its food and wine. A table of dishes cost more than 10 taels, and this didn't include the cost of the wine. A jar of 5-year-old Drunken Immortal cost at least 5 taels. Zhang Xiaoyang was known to not get drunk even after 1,000 cups. He had a great alcohol tolerance and could easily drink 3 jars. Based on this calculation, this meal would cost at least 30 taels of silver. 30 taels was enough for Yu Xingchen to eat and drink for a year. It would be strange if he wasn't in a hurry. Look at you, what's the hurry? Isn't it just a table of food and wine? Zhang Xiaoyang asked while holding back his laughter. It's easy for you to say. This is a table of food and wine from the Drunken Immortal restaurant, not a plate of leeks from a roadside shop, Yu Xingqian said anxiously. This table will cost at least 30 taels. 30 taels? Zhang Xiaoyang raised his eyebrows and asked Yu Xingqian. What? You don't believe me? Let me calculate for you. Yu Xingqian stretched out his hand and started counting with his fingers. Heavenly Master, with your useless stomach, you'll need at least 5 dishes. A dish from the Drunken Immortal restaurant usually costs 2 taels of silver, and this is only for ordinary dishes. If it's the best dishes, you'll have to pay more. Yu Xingqian calculated with a bitter face. 10 taels of silver for each dish. Only 10 taels. Zhang Xiaoyang curled his lip. Shut up. Yu Xingqian glared at Zhang Xiaoyang and said through gritted teeth, Don't be in a hurry. The rat has the shovel in its mouth, and the big head is at the back. Zhang Xiaoyang held back his laughter and didn't say anything. The Drunken Immortal restaurant has to be at least 5 years old and costs 5 taels of silver per jar. Yu Xingqian gestured with his hands. A jar of this size costs 5 taels. Heavenly Master, with your average alcohol tolerance, you'll need at least 3 jars. 15 taels of silver. This is all thanks to you, Heavenly Master, for being magnanimous and for giving to a poor man like me. 25 taels in total. Zhang Xiaoyang smiled. How about a private room? Heavenly Master, you're of noble status, you can't eat in the main hall. Yu Xingqian gritted his teeth and spat out, a private room costs at least 5 taels. Forget about the private room. Zhang Xiaoyang looked at Yu Xingqian, whose eyes were burning with anger, and said with a smile, The 2 of us can eat in the main hall. I have to spend the money for a private room. Yu Xingqian glared at Zhang Xiaoyang. I'm the head of the Chuanjian sect, who abstains from alcohol and meat. How can I treat someone to a drink in front of so many people? If word gets out, people will laugh their heads off. He. Zhang Xiaoyang couldn't help but laugh when he saw Yu Xingqian's bleeding heart. You're still laughing? Yu Xingqian glared at Zhang Xiaoyang. This meal costs me a year's worth of food and drink money. I say, brother you're too stingy. Zhang Xiaoyang smiled. The head of the Chuanjian sect is treating someone to a meal, and you're already heartbroken when you spend 30 taels. If word gets out, won't you lose your dignity as the head of the sect? If I knew you couldn't even bear to part with such a small amount of money, I wouldn't have made the bet with you. 30 taels is too little. Yu Xingqian panicked. I'm treating you alone. And you're saying I'm a vegetarian. Sigh, forget it. This wine is boring. You don't have to treat me. Just pretend I didn't mention it. Zhang Xiaoyang deliberately provoked Yu Xingqian. You can go back to Mount Zhongnan. I'm going back to Mount Longhu. Zhang Xiaoyang pretended to fly away as he spoke. Hey. Yu Xingqian fell for it. He grabbed Zhang Xiaoyang and said, Explain yourself. Chapter 249. I can't afford to lose? Yu Xingqian asked. 30 taels is too little, right? Zhang Xiaoyang looked away and didn't comment. Fine, then tell me, how much do you want to spend to satisfy you? Yu Xingqian made up his mind. No matter what, he was still the Chuanjian sect's sect leader. It would be unreasonable if he didn't even want to treat them to a meal. Then I'll tell you. Zhang Xiaoyang looked back at Yu Xingqian. Go ahead. Yu Xingqian was prepared to spend a fortune. 4 dishes, 2 meat dishes and 2 vegetables. You eat vegetables, I eat meat. Let's go with 2 taels. How about that? It's not too much, right? Zhang Xiaoyang said. What a good brother. Yu Xingqian punched Zhang Xiaoyang. You know how to save money. As for the wine, Zhang Xiaoyang twirled his beard as he looked at Yu Xingqian from the corner of his eyes. 5 years of drunken immortal. 3 jars should be enough for you, right? Yu Xingchen said generously. Zhang Xiaoyang shook his head. Not enough. Yu Xingchen saw Zhang Xiaoyang shake his head and made up his mind. 4 jars then. That should be enough, right? 3 jars of drunken immortal. Zhang Xiaoyang extended 3 fingers. Okay. Yu Xingchen smiled. 10-year-old wine. Zhang Xiaoyang crossed his 2 index fingers and made a cross. Yu Xingchen's smile froze. What do you think? Zhang Xiaoyang asked Yu Xingchen. Ha 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 ha. Yu Xingchen was stunned at first, then laughed out loud. Ha ha. Zhang Xiaoyang thought Yu Xingchen agreed and laughed as well. We're done. Yu Xingchen stopped laughing and turned to leave. 10 years old would cost at least 15 taels a jar. 3 jars would cost 45 taels. Including the cost of the dishes and the room, it would cost at least 60 taels to get this table. Don't, brother Yu. Brother Yu. Seeing Yu Xingchen turn around, Zhang Xiaoyang immediately ran up and put his arm around Yu Xingchen's shoulder. Yu Xingchen pulled a long face and shook Zhang Xiaoyang's hand off his shoulder. Brother Yu, look at you. Zhang Xiaoyang as he followed Yu Xingchen. 60 taels. You're asking for my life. Yu Xingchen said as he walked. I only get 30 taels of silver a year, but you're asking for 60 taels of silver as soon as you open your mouth. We're done. We must break off all relations. Okay. 30 taels. Is 30 taels enough? Zhang Xiaoyang said. Yu Xingchen stopped and turned to Zhang Xiaoyang. You said it yourself. I said 30 taels. Zhang Xiaoyang patted Yu Xingchen's shoulder again. This should be enough, right? That's more like it. Yu Xingchen turned around and walked alongside Zhang Xiaoyang. You said I have a fiery temper, but I think Brother Yu's temper is even worse than mine. Zhang Xiaoyang laughed. I think you're born in the year of the dog. You change your attitude faster than anyone else, Yu Xingchen scolded jokingly. You were so angry just now, but when you heard me scold you, look at that old face of yours. It's so happy that it's about to bloom. Zhang Xiaoyang smiled and said, Who are you calling old? Yu Xingchen said eloquently, Who else could it be? You blossom. Your old face. I'm only in my 40s. Zhang Xiaoyang laughed. I'm still young, okay? Young. Yu Xingchen jokingly scolded. You're already in autumn. Hey, you're swearing again, Zhang Xiaoyang reminded Yu Xingchen. I've already agreed to treat you to a drink. Why don't you let me scold you to my heart's content? Okay. Go ahead and scold me. Zhang Xiaoyang shook Yu Xingchen's shoulder. When you're used to it, you'll treat me to a drink every time you scold me. I won't have to worry about food and drink anymore. Get lost, ha ha ha. After the two of them joked around for a while, they both used their movement techniques and soared into the air, speeding towards Mount Longhu. Drunken Immortal Restaurant. Waiter, give us 6 signature dishes. 3 meat and 3 vegetables, Zhang Xiaoyang said to the waiter in the private room. Yu Xingchen's eyes widened. 3 meat and 3 vegetables? 6 dishes? And they were signature dishes? How much would that cost? Didn't they say there were only 4 dishes? Why did they change to 6? Yu Xingchen wanted to stop them, but he couldn't do so in front of the waiter. He could only drink his tea. Heavenly Master, what would you like to drink? The waiter asked respectfully. Zhang Xiaoyang was a regular here, so the waiter naturally knew who he was. 6 jars of drunken immortal. It needs to be aged for 20 years, Zhang Xiaoyang said. Pfft. When Yu Xingchen heard that Zhang Xiaoyang wanted 6 jars of drunken immortal, he couldn't help but spit out his tea all over the floor. Brother, what's wrong? Zhang Xiaoyang tried to hold back his laughter. Are you not feeling well? Brother Xiaoyang, you've asked for too much wine, Yu Xingchen said to Zhang Xiaoyang with a smile. You can't finish so much wine by yourself. 3 jars should be enough for you. It's fine, Zhang Xiaoyang said nonchalantly. I'll drink 3 jars here. I'll take the remaining 3 back. Yu Xingchen was speechless. His eyes were burning with anger. The price of the aged wine here was based on its age. Every year it was aged meant 1 tael of silver. 20 years of age meant 20 taels of silver. 6 jars would cost 120 taels of silver. In addition to the 6 signature dishes and the room fee, it would cost at least 150 taels of silver. Yu Xingchen touched the 200 taels of silver in his sleeve. His heart began to bleed. He had scrimped and saved for many years, but more than half of the 200 taels of silver had been eaten by this glutton in front of him. He picked up his tea and looked at Zhang Xiaoyang hatefully as he drank. "Do you want anything else, Heavenly Master?" the waiter asked. "Brother Yu, do you want anything else?" Zhang Xiaoyang looked up and asked Yu Xingchen with a smile. Cough, 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 cough. Yu Xingchen couldn't hold back his tea and started coughing violently. "It's already 150 taels of silver. You want anything else?" If it weren't for the waiter, he would have rushed over and given this drunkard a good beating. "Brother Yu?" Zhang Xiaoyang asked while holding back his laughter. Yu Xingchen didn't say anything. He just stared straight at Zhang Xiaoyang. If looks could kill, Zhang Xiaoyang would have died 100 times over by now. "That's all. I'll call you if I need anything else," Zhang Xiaoyang said to the waiter as he looked at Yu Xingchen, who was sitting opposite him. "All right." The waiter nodded and said, "Please wait for a moment. The dishes will be ready soon." With that, he ran downstairs. Only the gloating Zhang Xiaoyang and the pale-faced Yu Xingchen were left in the room. "How long have we known each other?" Yu Xingchen sipped his tea and asked Zhang Xiaoyang. Zhang Xiaoyang smiled and said, "Why are you asking me this?" "About 30 years, Yu Xingchen looked at Zhang Xiaoyang and asked. "That's right." Zhang Xiaoyang smiled and picked up his tea. "We've known each other since we were little Taoist boy. What's wrong?" "Today's wine will be the end of our friendship," said Yu Xingchen. "Drink well. After drinking, you can be your celestial master Zhang, and I'll be my sect master Yu. We'll mind our own business and never meet again." "Brother Yu, look at you. We haven't even drunk and you're already talking nonsense." Zhang Xiaoyang laughed. "Who the F***ck is talking nonsense with you?" Yu Xingchen slammed his teacup on the table. "End of friendship. We must end our friendship. Isn't it just a drink? Is there a need to end our friendship?" Zhang Xiaoyang laughed, taking pleasure in Yu Xingchen's misfortune. "A drink?" Yu Xingchen was so angry that his beard blew and his eyes widened. 150 taels of silver for a drink? Who the F***ck do you think I am? The treasury of the Ministry of Revenue. End of friendship. End of friendship. Look at yourself. You're the King Chuanjin sect master. Zhang Xiaoyang laughed and said, "You're so anxious over such a trivial matter. It's easy for you to say that. So what if I'm the Chuanjin sect master?" "The Chuanjin sect master is also human." Yu Xingchen cursed. "I've been living frugally for 7 to 8 years and only managed to save up 200 taels of silver. You old bastard, you want 150 taels of silver for a drink? I should end my friendship with a scoundrel like you while it's still early. The sooner I cut ties with you, the better. But you have 200 taels." Zhang Xiaoyang laughed and said, "If you knew this would happen, you would have asked for 30 years of wine." "Why didn't you King say so earlier? You're so unkind." "I'm unkind." Yu Xingchen pointed at his own nose with his finger. Hey, you and I agreed on 4 ordinary dishes and 3 jars of drunken immortal. You King dog, turning against me just like that. Not only did you order 150 taels of wine and food, you even King accused me of being unkind. Look at how anxious you are. Zhang Xiaoyang laughed. "To tell you the truth, you don't have to pay for this drink. I don't have to pay for it. Yu Xingchen was stunned. Then who's paying for it? You're paying for it yourself? I'm not as rich as you, brother Yu, to be able to save 200 taels. Zhang Xiaoyang laughed as he drank his tea. I drink a small amount every 3 days and a big one every 5 days. I can't save any money. Then who's going to pay for this drink? Yu Xingchen asked. Don't tell me we're going to dine and dash? Let me tell you. Zhang Xiaoyang lowered his voice and said to Yu Xingchen, a while ago, I was helping the owner of the Drunken Immortal with his ancestral grave. He wanted to donate 1,000 taels of incense money, but I declined. Declined? Yu Xingchen was puzzled. It's normal for believers to donate incense money. Why did you decline? He. Zhang Xiaoyang looked at Yu Xingchen meaningfully. Take a guess, brother Yu. He picked up his teacup and continued to sip his tea. Declined incense money? Yu Xingchen twirled his beard and began to think. After a long time, he suddenly realized. King calculated it well. He. Zhang Xiaoyang laughed. I've made a fool of myself in front of brother Yu. You're King evil. Yu Xingchen laughed. If you don't accept incense money, the next time you eat and drink here, they won't even take your money. I'm really impressed by your methods. Aren't you afraid that the ancestor will punish you? I don't accept incense money. This is called empathizing with the people. Zhang Xiaoyang laughed. Accepting their hospitality is called doing them a favor. What's wrong with that? Besides, I already have enough incense money. If I continue to accept like this, those disciples won't want to make progress. You're really smart to make this deal. Yu Xingchen laughed. You're accumulating merit and benefiting from it. You're taking advantage of the situation, and yet you're still being obedient. Only this once. It won't happen again. Zhang Xiaoyang laughed. In my opinion, if there's this time, there'll be a next time. What's that saying again? Yu Xingchen deliberately rubbed his head and pretended to think. What's a dog can't change? You can't change your habit of eating shit. Zhang Xiaoyang laughed at Yu Xingchen. A dog can't change its habit of eating you, Yu Xingchen retorted. While the two were teasing each other, 2 waiters came in with wine and dishes. One carried a large tray with 6 signature dishes on it. The other carried several jars of wine, all of which were 20-year-old Drunken Immortal. 2 Taoists, the dishes are here, the waiter said as he placed the dishes on the table one by one. Crispy roast goose, West Lake vinegar fish, braised drunken prawns, 8 treasure dragon phoenix jade, 5 color lotus rolls, pearl lily soup, 3 meat and 3 vegetable dishes. 3 jars of 20-year-old Drunken Immortal. The other waiter placed the 6 jars of wine beside the table. The other 3 jars have been prepared for you. You can take them from the counter when you leave. Okay. Zhang Xiaoyang smiled. He took out a banknote and handed it to the waiter. I'll pay the bill first. I don't want to get drunk and cause trouble. Seeing Zhang Xiaoyang take out the money, the waiter hurriedly waved his hand. I wouldn't dare. My shopkeeper has said that as long as you come to our shop as a guest in the future, everything will be on the house. We can't take a single cent from you. How can that be? Zhang Xiaoyang pretended to be surprised. How can you eat and drink without paying? Master, you've forgotten, the waiter said with a smile. A month ago, my shopkeeper Wang asked you to check the feng shui of his ancestral grave. You didn't take a single cent, shopkeeper Wang? A month ago? Zhang Xiaoyang pretended to think hard. After a long time, he pretended to remember. Oh, I remember now. Why, he's the shopkeeper here? Master, you're so forgetful, the waiter said with a smile. That won't do. That's one thing. I have to pay for the wine. Zhang Xiaoyang stuffed the banknote into the waiter's hands. The waiter hurriedly pushed back Zhang Xiaoyang's banknotes in fear and trepidation. That won't do, that won't do. If the shopkeeper knew that I accepted your money, he would break my legs. That won't do, won't do. You two immortal masters, please enjoy. I'll take my leave now. After saying that, the waiter winked at the other waiter and turned to leave the private room. I couldn't tell that you're so good at acting. Yu Xingchen laughed. If you were in the theater, you'd be a famous actor. Don't King mock me. I didn't even ask you to pay for this meal, and you're still mocking me. Zhang Xiaoyang picked up a jar of drunken immortal and broke the yellow seal. He put it under his nose and took a deep breath. Good wine, really good wine. Haha, it's a pity that you can't drink. You can't experience the joys of life. I'm not going to talk nonsense with you. Yu Xingchen picked up his chopsticks and put a mouthful of food into his mouth. What do you think about Xuanji? Are you really going to set up the 1,000-spirit formation to find the cauldron? Whoever wants to go can go. I'm not going anyway. Zhang Xiaoyang said as he poured the wine into his cup. Xuanji, that old bastard, isn't a good person either. He's just giving us orders. He really thinks we're fools. You're not going? Yu Xingchen asked. No. Zhang Xiaoyang picked up his cup and drank it in one gulp. His face was full of satisfaction. That's against the imperial order. You'll be beheaded. Yu Xingchen reminded Zhang Xiaoyang. Against the imperial order? Humph. Zhang Xiaoyang continued to pour wine into his cup. Brother Yu, do you really not know, or are you pretending not to know? Right now, His Majesty is like a turtle in a jar. He can't even take care of himself. How can he even think about finding the cauldron? Turtle in a jar? Yu Xingchen frowned when he heard Zhang Xiaoyang's words. What do you mean? Old man, don't pretend. Zhang Xiaoyang put down his cup and pulled off a goose leg. Can't you see something so obvious? What am I pretending? Yu Xingchen said anxiously. What's going on? You really don't know? Zhang Xiaoyang put the goose leg under his nose and sniffed. Nonsense. Yu Xingchen said. Why would I ask you if I knew? You haven't looked at the stars these past 2 days. Zhang Xiaoyang stared at Yu Xingchen and asked seriously. Stars? Yu Xingchen was puzzled. What stars? What else could it be? Zhang Xiaoyang took a bite of the roasted goose leg. Celestial phenomena, of course. Celestial phenomena? Yu Xingchen continued to frown. What celestial phenomena? It's been drizzling for over a month now. How can I look at the celestial phenomena? The scarlet stars are as bright as fire, hovering around the heart constellation. What do you think it is? Zhang Xiaoyang glanced at Yu Xingchen, then continued to eat his goose leg. Antares guarding the heart, Yu Xingchen exclaimed. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.